From Labour, they took the council for the first time in 44 years off the Conservatives in 2022. They were hoping to keep control of that council this year. They have not been able to do that. Now the council falls into no overall control. I can tell you, out of 58 seats, the Conservatives end the night with the most number of seats. They are the largest party. They have won 29 seats on the council. Labour just shy of that on 28, and one independent seat won here at Wandsworth Council. So no overall control, but the Conservatives, the largest party, they let off a huge number of cheers to receive that news, but perhaps not the news that they had been hoping for, to become the largest party and retake control of Wandsworth Council. Of course, it was a key battleground for them. So let's now get reaction from the Wandsworth Conservatives group leader, Aled Richard Jones. Thanks for joining us on GB News. It's been a long night for you. You finally got your results. What's your reaction?
This is a great result for Wandsworth and great result for us as a local party. It's extremely difficult to regain the council at the first time of asking after losing a council, but we are the largest party now back on Wandsworth Council, and we're confident we can form an administration and run the council again.
The Conservatives, though, did put in a huge amount of resources here into Wandsworth. They really hoped they'd be able to regain this council. The fact they haven't perhaps will be disappointing to the Conservatives when they look at the picture more nationally.
It's a fantastic result locally, it really is. If you look at the trend of Conservative councils that lose control, particularly in London, typically those groups go back. It's very hard to regain ground at the first time of asking. We have done that, we're now the largest party again, and we can form an administration. It's a real credit to the campaign we ran locally that focused on the bread and butter issues that our residents really care about, like keeping council tax low, keeping the weekly bin collection, but also being an honest and transparent group and setting out our agenda, and not like the previous Labour administration that wasn't honest with residents.
Well, this, although it is a local election, many people up and down the country looking at national issues when it comes to who they want to vote for. Up and down the country, we've seen a reform wave so far this evening, overnight, as people have turned to Nigel Farage's party, as they've wanted to give him their votes, as opposed to perhaps the Labour Party and the Conservatives. Nigel Farage overnight said the duopoly of British politics is over. That's not been the case here. Both the Tories and the Labour were the two big party winners here. But what would you say to Nigel Farage saying the duopoly of British politics is over? Is it?
I think it's far too early to reach that conclusion. I mean, fundamentally, we won in Wandsworth because we offered a pragmatic centre-right agenda for our residents that spoke to their everyday issues. Things like keeping cost of living down by keeping council tax as low as we can, guaranteeing the services they rely on, like a weekly bin collection, like tough action on graffiti, dog mess and fly tipping. It's not glamorous, but it's what people want from local government, and it's what restores faith in politics, is actually making credible promises that you can deliver on.
And of course, the Labour Party weren't able to keep control of this council. Where do you think this leaves the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer? Will we see a new Prime Minister next week?
It remains to be seen. I mean, there are two components to this. There's obviously the national component going on, and the fact that people are deeply, deeply dissatisfied with Keir Starmer. I think that came up a lot on the doorstep. But equally, it's a thoroughly local verdict on this Labour administration. Time after time, people said, Wandsworth Conservatives ran the council for 44 years, you set the lowest council tax in that time, and you delivered quality services. In the last 4 years under Labour, tax has gone up, even though the Labour Council has said it hasn't gone up, and the UK Statistics Authority have called them out for that, and services have gone down. So it's a thoroughly local verdict on a failing Labour council.
OK, well, Aled Richard Jones, group leader here at Wandsworth Conservatives, thanks for joining us on GB News. It's been a busy night full of results here at Wandsworth Council. It goes to no overall control, a loss from Labour. Lots more results expected throughout the day, and we'll, of course, bring you all of them here on GB News.
Good morning. A historic night as Reform UK surges in the local elections.
Labour loses control of key councils, including Redditch, Hartlepool and Tamworth. Already strong signs that it's the start of a red wall wipeout. And there are still results to come.
Will a battering by voters trigger the end of Sir Keir Starmer's premiership? I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello and this is GB News Breakfast.
So major breaking news overnight, and the electoral map of the United Kingdom is changing as we speak.
Well, there's delight for Reform UK as Nigel Farage celebrates a historic change, with Reform seizing 300 seats so far. Reform MP Lee Anderson spoke to GB News overnight.
It's absolutely astounding. There's going to be an annihilation of the Labour Party in the Red Wall tonight.
Well, the Prime Minister has taken a battering, Labour hemorrhaging more than 220 seats, a number that's expected to grow.
Already talk about his leadership is developing. What will Ed Miliband do? Andy Burnham, a huge weekend for the PMs, only 2 years into his premiership.
It's the first real moment that voters got to answer one key question. Is this government delivering, or is it done?
Will you resign if Labour lose thousands of seats, Prime Minister?
Well, it's not just Labour's fate hanging in the balance. The Conservatives also look like they're going to be pretty bruised. They've lost 110 seats so far.
Turning this tanker around is not going to happen overnight. We are headed back in the right direction. We're going to see some signs of that progress tonight, but let's not be under any illusion. It is going to be a difficult night.
Well, elsewhere, Zach Polansky's Green Party is still holding out hope of hoovering up seats across the capital. But with the majority of councils yet to be announced, do they fancy their chances too much?
We're beginning to paint the map of Britain. Not yet the county council election results in, but the local councils. We're beginning to see these colours painted. But yet, look at the 32 London boroughs. A lot of these still to be counted. A lot of seats yet to be declared. The night is yet young, even though it's just 6 in the morning. It's not just England, though. Let's not forget, in Wales, there is an entirely new electoral system and so many seats to be won. And in Scotland, they haven't started counting yet either. This night has only just begun.
Well, the Lib Dems are in second place behind Reform UK. They've got 221 seats so far, and earlier Martin Daubney spoke to Christine Jardine.
What the country needs at the moment is hard-working politicians who will do the right thing, who will stand up for people and who will work for the communities in a constructive way that brings people together, not divides them.
Throughout the morning, we're going to have the latest analysis and we'll bring you through all the peaks and troughs that will come to define England's 2026 local elections. And that's before we even consider Wales and Scotland, with results set to trickle in throughout the day. There's already fresh calls for the Prime Minister to quit, and the excitement is only just getting started. You do not want to miss a moment.
Right, let's get some analysis straight away, should we, on what is proving to be a momentous night. Our political editor, Christopher Hope, is here in the studio. Chris, morning to you.
Morning.
I mean, look, where do we start? I mean, it looks like a red wall wipeout, doesn't it?
Yes, and a political reset for this country. You've got this Reform UK party surging. As things stand, they're up 227 council seats. Tories down 59, not surprised, defending fewer, but Labour down 152. Lib Dem's up slightly. Greens not surging as much as we thought, not winning, in fact losing 5 seats on Richmond-upon-Thames, where they are traditionally quite strong, not winning widely in Oxford. So weirdly, the Greens surge we've been seeing recently may have had the edge taken off it, with controversy over the leader, Zach Polansky, his past, what he said about the police after the Golders Green attacks. So fascinating, but no question, Reform is flying. Now, we've got some quotes in from Nigel Farage. He says we're witnessing a historic change in British politics. Forget left-right. There's no more left-right, he said. It's gone. out of the window, finished.
Is he right when he says that?
As things stand, he could be. I mean, he's trying to say that Reform UK is not the party of left or right. I mean, some would say it is a right-wing party, but if it can make these gains that it looks like it may do in the Red Wall at the expense of Labour, that's a whole new challenge to Labour. We'll be hearing later from all the leaders, Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, he'll be saying, making his remarks. They are concerned. I mean, they are concerned. We're getting historical precedent sent to us by Labour saying it's not that bad, it's mid-term. The general elections one that counts, that's in 2029, 2028. But really, this is really bad. Just not even 2 years into this Labour government.
I mean, it's fascinating over the left-right issue, because you're looking at places like Wigan, Bolton, Salford, Halton, Hartlepool, Thameside, Redditch, Tamworth.
Yeah.
I mean, these are all places where really Labour should have an iron grasp.
You mentioned Thameside. That is Angela Rayner's Ashton-underlined seat. I mean, that is she will feel that acutely. What we're talking about here, these are the ground troops of these parties losing their seats. These are the people who get the vote out for people like Angela Rayner every election. Those are friends of Angela Rayner and others too. They are losing their seats. That's why they will feel it. It will go to the heart of this entire party.
What does this mean for Sir Keir Starmer? It's going to be a difficult weekend for him now already. We can see that, can't we?
Very difficult weekend. How bad will it be? Well, more than 1,500 losses, we were told, would be concerning for his leadership. 2,000 really serious. We'll wait and see how it plays out. It's not really clear who replaces him. Ed Miliband apparently is less than keen to replace him. He's done that job back in 2010, 2015 in terms of leading Labour. Doesn't want to do it again. Andy Burnham's cancelled the speech this morning. What does that mean? The reports overnight, not fully denied by Labour, that Ed Miliband wants Keir Starmer to set out a timetable for him to stand down. But all the language out from the team around Keir Starmer and Keir Starmer himself is he wants to serve the full 5 years, fight that election in 2029. He sees it as a personal mandate back in 2024 when he won that election.
What do we make of the Lib Dems in all of this? I mean, they're in, as far as the seat count goes, they're in second place at the moment. They've gained, 35? It's not the sort of surge they'd be hoping for under the circumstances.
They're not really cutting through, and it's been a problem for David, the leader. They're not sure how they define themselves. They often define in opposition to things nationally, Brexit, Farage, Trump. But what are they doing locally? I think that's a concern.
Normally, a strong local party. I mean, it's where they've always got through.
But maybe they're doing better at the expense of the Greens, who we thought would be doing better at this stage. Certainly, the Greens are not doing as well as we thought.
No, they're only up 22 seats at the moment.
But not doing well in Richmond upon Thames, not doing well in Oxford, places you thought they'd do well. We're watching places like Hackney later around lunchtime in inner London. That's where they could be doing very well. I think the London story for the Greens is where I think that'll be fascinating. They'll do well because of the Gaza issue against Labour, even though it's not on the ticket. It's about bins and about council tax this election. Big issues still matter. In London, it's Gaza in some quarters.
The Lib Dem picture, as we see it so far, they previously, as we've reflected, they've done well, haven't they, locally? When mainstream parties have been slacking, they've picked up. They've been the main beneficiary. That looks as though it's changing. It is this political reset that we're witnessing.
Feel like a reset, and not in the Red Wall, elsewhere too. I mean, London isn't really very Red Wall. We'll be seeing that later. There's a long way to go. We're barely a fifth into this, 5,000 council seats. We're not even talking about the elections in Wales and Scotland. That all floods in this afternoon. So what's been happening is about a third of councils were counting overnight, and that's why we're getting those results now. And then there'll be a pause while the new counters come in, and those results start happening at lunchtime. But by tonight, we'll have a full picture of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, heck, it is, as you say, the big number of seats. 1,500, you say, in terms of losses for Labour. That's the sort of key point, is it?
That's the line to look for, and any more than that gets more and more tricky. But we're looking at some serious issues here for Labour to get to grips. Why can't they define themselves? Talk of a speech by the Prime Minister on Monday. They're watching this nervously through their hands.
What I'm intrigued by is whether this is a protest vote, in a sense. Are people buying what Reform is selling? Or, as perhaps people now say about the last general election, people are just voicing their dissatisfaction with the status quo.
That's exactly what Labour are saying. They point out that these midterm elections are traditionally a poor indicator of nationally. Tony Blair had some very bad midterms. They're always a wake-up call, a chance to change course for any government, but it doesn't necessarily mean they'll lose an election, a general election.
I was listening to Sarah Sackman speaking to Martin Daubney overnight, and she was saying that, look, people just need to give the plan some time. Is that right? Is this about more time, or is this people saying they don't like
it? It is about more time. I mean, for example, the new Labour government, Tony Blair, in his first term, lost 1,100 councillors in 1999, 2 years after the election. So we're looking at more than that on the forecast, but it's comparable. And he, of course, went on to win 2 more elections in 2021, 2001 and 2005. So they think that's what can happen again.
Interesting. OK, thank you very much, Christopher Hope. We're going to go now to GB News' Deputy Political Editor, Tom Harwood, who's at the media wall for us this morning. He's going to take us through what we've been seeing overnight. Morning to you, Tom.
Very good morning to you. Yes, we've seen a few results trickle in overnight. Now, it might not look like much at this stage, but actually this fairly monochrome map contains within it some fairly important data. Why? Because all of these black splodges across the district and borough councils of England, these black splodges denote areas of no overall control. For instance, look down here at Exeter. That was once a red splodge on the map, and it is now a black splodge on the map. Even though only a third of the council was up for election, the Labour Party has gone back, the Green Party has gone forward, and that means that this council has shifted into no overall control. If we go over to Essex, we can also see big black splodges of no overall control. Up in the northeast, no overall control. Huge advances for the Reform Party there, even though, again, in many of these areas, just 1/3 of council seats is up for election. Now, somewhere where every single council seat is up for election is London, and it's 32 boroughs. And slowly but surely, we are seeing these results trickle in. I would expect over the course of this morning, we're going to see a lot more of this London map colour in. Particularly, we're hearing word that Wandsworth, this borough here, has switched from being controlled by the Labour Party to no overall control. Potentially even the Conservatives grabbing that back even through some sort of deal. Now, that would be a significant loss for the Labour Party. When people were thinking which councillors would fall, I'm not sure Labour was number one on Wandsworth was number one on people's watch list for the Labour Party within London. But crucially, we should be looking also at some of these other inner London boroughs. Maybe we should be looking up at Islington, we should be looking at Westminster, and we should be looking at Southwark as well, in terms of councils that might fall to the Greens or even to the Conservatives. The further out of London we go, that's where we're looking at Reform territory, keeping a close eye on some of these outer London boroughs too. But my goodness me, this is not just a London story or just an England story. Let's see if we can jump ahead to Wales. I'm not sure we can see the Welsh map, but I should say, oh, we can see the Welsh map. Let's have a look at this. Now, it is a gloriously empty map as the counting is yet to start, but there is an entirely new electoral system in Wales. The number of seats has grown enormously, and there is a tight race in Wales for first place. Will it be Plaid Cymru? Will it be Reform UK? Crucially, where will the Labour Party come? There have been some projections that the First Minister of Wales, Anuled Morgan, might even lose her seat. Now, that would be a very, very significant moment. We are looking at perhaps the tail end of some of those worse expectations for the Labour Party. Finally, let's jump ahead to Scotland. Scotland is, of course, a multi-member constituency event. So you've got all of these different constituencies in the country, but also regional MSPs as well. We'll begin to paint this map through the course of the morning and indeed more so in the afternoon, and we'll begin to see who might win that battle for second place in Scotland. It's almost nailed on that the SNP will have a remarkable yet another win after 18 years in power in that country in one form or another. Question mark as to whether they'll get a majority or not. That's one to watch. But crucially, party. Will it be Labour or Reform who pips the second-place post? We'll keep a close eye on it here at GB News.
Tom, thank you so much. So many more results still to come. We should have a full picture by tea time.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. All right, should we see what we've got so far, what we make of the results we've seen so far with Labour MP Catherine Atkinson and Tory MP Jack Rankin. Good to see you both.
Good morning.
This morning. Catherine, let's start with you, should we, on this? I mean, it looks like a disaster, doesn't it, for the Labour Party?
Well, I've been knocking on doors in Lincoln and Sheffield and different parts of London, and certainly whenever I've seen the hard work of volunteers and candidates, and whenever you have a loss, it's absolutely gutting. And I've been at many accounts that I've had people cry on my shoulder, and I've had points where we've punched the air. So I do know that it will have been a long night for many people. But I've been somewhat perplexed by some of the coverage saying that this is an absolute shock result. I think as we were hearing earlier, after the Labour landslide in 1997, Labour then lost 1,150 councillors in 1999. So it's not surprising that when you do have mid-term elections, it is often hugely disappointing for the governing party. And while I think that some of the Greens haven't been picking up as much as they would have liked, what we have seen is we have seen them split the vote and allow some Reform to win. Now, I think Reform will have been disappointed not to have taken control of Lincoln.
But Reform have had a fantastic night, admit that.
I think they have done well, and I think particularly for councillors who have been serving and trying to protect their communities from Conservative austerity cuts, considering how many Tories are now wearing Reform rosettes, it will be particularly galling that in fact you often have the same people then in control who cause the damage in the first place.
I mean, it's interesting though. I mean, midterms, if you want to phrase it as midterms, are often problematic for a government. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, the Conservatives.
But when you look at Tony Blair losing 1,100 and odd seats, that's still significantly different to losing 1,500, possibly 2,000.
Well, we'll see what happens. Obviously, we've got the whole weekend, and I think that we did have recent. I think this morning we've had some predicting 1,500, but we've also had the last few weeks where people have been talking about 2,000. So we'll see what happens. And for every single one of...
I had a Labour insider say to me last week she expected 2,000 seats to go.
Well, then...
But I think this is the difference, isn't it? This is the point where you've got Labour insiders saying it's a disaster. You've got a Prime Minister who is deeply, deeply unpopular. Tony Blair didn't have that problem back in '99. So this is a different situation, isn't it?
Well, it wasn't just in 1999. You also then saw the Conservatives lost every local election from 2011 to 2014 and then actually got a majority in 2015. So what we have seen consistently is that local elections are a really poor predictor of what happens in general elections. But don't get me wrong, for every single one of those Labour councillors who have served for so long, I am gutted for them.
Let's bring in Jack Rankin, the Conservative MP for Windsor. Morning, Jack. Tories have lost ground overnight. What are you making of what you're seeing so far?
Well, I'm not sure I'd phrase it that way. The last time lots of these
seats...
seats...
You've lost to Reform, losing seats in Brentwood, Tamworth and North East Lincolnshire.
But last time a lot of these seats were fought was in just after the vaccine bans, when there was two-party politics and we were polling 43% in the polls. So you've got to rebase it, I think, to when they were last fought to have any realistic view of what's happened overnight. I think there are green shoots for us there. I mean, at the last general election, obviously, we were hollowed out. We went from 366 to 126. It takes some time to rebuild. Kemi has been leading us in that authentically Conservative direction. And I think if you look at London, you can see the green shoots, but it's going to take some time because trust is one of those things. You can lose trust in 5 minutes, but it takes 10 years to rebuild. So this is, the beginning of a base camp for us, but I'm confident that we're going in the right direction under Kemi's leadership.
I mean, look, 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10,
well,
Jack, for effort.
Well, I'm maybe ambitious, Stephen.
But to say you're going in the right direction, as it currently stands, you're in negative territory.
From 4 years ago, when we were polling at 43%.
Is that the right
in the
direction
vaccine
to go
bounce.
down?
We've been moving into an era of multi-party politics, and the last time these seats were fought, my party was on 43% in two-party politics. We were always going to go backwards. The question is about our foundations for the
But
future.
you've got an open goal with the way the government is polling at the moment. You had an open goal.
And at this point in the election cycle, you expect the main opposition to be picking up seats. I think really this is a continuation of a downward trajectory, which I think will be hugely concerning for Kemi Badenoch.
Nice try, Catherine. You're going to lose 1,500 to 2,000 seats today. Look, we were in office for 14 years. It's going to take some time to rebuild trust. That's absolutely
true. Can you rebuild it though, or have you lost it? Have those traditional Tory voters gone to Reform and they're not coming back?
Well, it's mixed around the country. Obviously, you can see that in London and the South we're doing better than in the North of England, because in each and every seat in multi-party politics we have to fight for the right to be heard and the right to be competitive, and that is a slow process. I think we're going through the right steps as a united team under Kemi. But looking at the headline numbers, which is what you're doing, Stephen, with a smile on your face.
You're down. You're down 117 at the moment.
And when most of those were fought, it was a two-party politics world when we were polling 43% on the back of a vaccine bounce. We were always going to go backwards today, and I'm sorry about good, hard-working local Conservative councillors who've lost their seat, but that is the context really in which those results need to be.
But it's this odd situation where people are unhappy with the Labour Party at the moment. They are unhappy with the ruling party.
Yeah.
And whether Catherine says that's to be expected or not, that's the situation. They're not turning to you. They're turning in their droves, as it currently stands, to Reform UK.
I don't think that is a fair reflection of what's happening.
Really? They're up 317 seats.
They're not surging in the polls. What's happening is everything is splitting every which way. You're seeing a lot of the Reform gains that you're seeing a lot of the Labour votes staying at home or going to Green, and they're winning those seats on not much of an increased vote share. I think Catherine is right to say that you shouldn't read too much into those local election results. I mean, the year before the 83 election, the SDP were on 52% in the polls, and this is a supposedly insurgent party which at best are polling in the high 20s.
I want to bring Christopher Hope in on all of this. I don't know what you make of it all. And they're both defending their ground, Chris. I wonder how much credence they've got.
Well, I think Catherine's right. I mean, if you look at the history here, I mean, Labour, of course, lost 1,100 councillors 2 years into their first government. After then, 2 more landslides happened. The Tories lost every election between 2011 and 2014, and then won a majority narrowly in 2015. So we need to be quite cautious, but I do think the ground is shifting under both your parties' feet here. I mean, we are looking at a reset of British politics. Will it be a protest vote, or will it be lasting? And that's the question, because Reform UK and the Greens, neither of those parties are ready for government in any sense, with not enough policies, not enough MPs to form even a cabinet. So we are in uncharted territory for our country.
We certainly are. Catherine, you were mentioning that you've been knocking on hundreds of doors this week. What are you hearing from people on the doorstep? Are they frustrated with this government? Do they want Sir Keir Starmer to go?
Well, I've met some people who are renters who will now be protected because of the renting act that came through last week. I've met young families who are amongst the nearly 500,000 that are being lifted out of poverty, and I've met pensioners who are benefiting from the £500 increase in state pension. So I have met people who have benefited from the repair that this Labour government is having to do, and who generally have all agreed that the cost of living should be the priority. And I think that's what we have to be even bolder on. But I do think people want to see change faster. I think over the last year we've brought in 50 new laws, but in terms of actually the time it takes for that to actually kick in.
Have you knocked on the door of any small business owners or landlords?
Young people out of work?
Well, and I think that the rise in those not in employment or education or training is hugely concerning. There's been a long-term trend that this government is taking real action on. But I do think that it is understandable that people want change faster. And I think particularly when they saw for over a decade lots of promises and then the damage that austerity did. So I, in no way, I'm saying that things are fixed. But when you are seeing NHS waiting lists to the lowest point than they have been in 3 years, when you are seeing borrowing and immigration, when you're seeing so many things that are down and going in the right direction that we want to see, I hope that we go further and faster.
See, the interesting thing, Jack, as far as the Conservatives are concerned, again, we've got all weekend for these results to properly come through, but Kemi Badenoch has been making some important strides forward. You know, the polling has been better, her performance has been a lot better. The question with all of this is there cut-through? Is she actually are people actually recognising that? Or are they just saying, we still don't trust you?
Well, I think on Kemi, she is really starting to get cut through. But as I've said, you know, you lose trust in 5 minutes. It takes 10 years to rebuild. So we're at the foothold of things. My concern really is what the Labour Party. If
so you're acknowledging you're not going to win the next general election, then?
And I said absolutely not what I said there, Stephen. I think
you said it takes 10 years to build it back. We've got an election in 29.
Well, you know, we'll see what we will see. There's lots of a road to come, isn't it? And my concern is what Labour are going to do now, because I don't know whether the Labour MPs will be minded to change leader. That's for Catherine. But I'm concerned if they do that, then they will move to the left. And if they don't, Starmer is going to be in hock to the left of his party, that's going to mean no welfare reform and even worse choices for our economy.
I think it's really interesting that both of you have said that you think that Kemi Badenoch is doing well. The only things that I've heard described about her in the last few weeks is that she's rude, and that hasn't played well with former Conservatives. I think that's
most popular leader in the country.
That's definitely not been reflected on what I've been hearing on the doors, but I do agree the concern about reform and the Greens very obviously not being ready for power, and unfortunately we're seeing the evidence of that in how they've been running councils. I think in Worcestershire they hiked council tax by 9%, and you had Nigel Farage saying he wished he hadn't bothered taking control. Certainly we have seen in my neck of the woods in Derbyshire, they promised tax cuts. It was on all of their leaflets. It's very interesting that their leaflets this time round don't say anything about tax cuts, but what we have seen is not only tax increases, we've seen care homes, 8 care homes are being closed. We've seen adult education centres being closed. And I think in Kent, which was going to be the blueprint of the perfect reform council, we've seen infighting and resignations and children's services being downgraded by Ofsted.
But it's interesting, if you're going to attack Reform UK leaflets, what about Labour leaflets that have no mention, a lot of them at least, have no mention of Keir Starmer on them? Keir
Starmer was not on the ballot papers. It was local councillors on the ballot papers. But you were asking me at the start, and I'm not trying to shirk the question at all, whether or not Labour should be changing leader. Absolutely not. You don't, when you're on a plane and you're not even halfway, don't kick the pilot out and turn behind you and say, who wants to fly the plane, particularly when you are flying into what is stormy weather internationally. We have seen Keir Starmer absolutely win back our reputation on the international stage. And it wasn't just Boris Johnson that was considered a joke. The Conservatives, when it came to international politics, were closing in on ourselves, falling out with our European allies. And Keir Starmer has shown real
special relationship. We're falling out with President Trump.
Every single day, we are working so closely with the United States, and it's absolutely essential that we continue to do so. But isolationist politics is never going to be in British economic interests, and I'm really pleased that Keir Starmer has shown real leadership on the international stage, and he was absolutely right to ensure we didn't jump in with both feet to the Iran war, which is what the Conservative and Reform leaders wanted to do.
All right, you two, we're going to leave it there just for the time being. Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you, you too. Right, let's go to TV News Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood, who is in his element at the media war. Morning to you, Tom. What's happening?
A very good morning to you. Now, it looks like a fairly blank map. It looks in some ways like a bit of a monochrome map, but within that monochrome hides all manner of sin. Yes, look at some of these black splodges across particularly the east coast of England. I'm going to take you up first to Hartlepool. Now, Hartlepool looks like a black splodge here. That obscures something important. The Reform Party won every single seat up for election in Hartlepool, but because only 1/3 of the seats are up for election, that means the council goes to no overall control. We're depicting no overall control as a black splodge on this map, and we see that pattern repeated in places like Hull. Here, again, the Reform Party won 10 seats, Labour lost 8, the Lib Dems lost 2, and that meant it all went into no overall control, despite the Reform Party winning a huge percentage of the seats that were up for election. 2/3 of the seats were not up for election. Again, further down the coast, it's the same picture in northeast Lincolnshire. All but 1 seat went to Reform. Again, it goes to no overall control because not every seat was up for election. But that's a bit of a flavour of what Reform is doing, particularly along the east coast of the country. There have been some glimmers of hope for the Conservative Party, however. Let's go and look at Wandsworth over here in London. Wandsworth was won by the Labour Party at the last time this council was up for election, and now it has been on a knife edge throughout the night. As you can see, it's not blue on the map. It goes to black, no overall control. Why is that? Well, the Labour Party has lost 7 seats here. The Conservative Party has gained 7 seats here. But that takes it to a tantalising 28 seats to Labour, 29 seats to the Conservatives, 1 seat to a very powerful independent councillor who will get to determine who controls this this particular borough in London. I gather that the independent councillor is in himself an ex-Conservative, so it looks likely the Conservatives will control Wandsworth, although a no overall control council. Another spot of light for the Conservatives down here in Harlow. The Conservative Party have managed to hold on as well, and I think that was a Reform target. But over there, of course, in Essex, you see big Reform gains pushing some of these districts into no overall control. Let's take a step now to remind ourselves what the map looked like before this election. So if we just wind back the clock, you can see how much more of the map we need to fill in. Just how many county councils the Conservatives are defending. This will be one to watch. The Reform Party is targeting Norfolk, they're targeting Suffolk, Essex. These are going to be big ones to watch over the course of this morning and through into this afternoon. But also look at this red wall up here in the north, and particularly the northwest of England. How much of this might turn black as the Greens make advances, as Reform makes advances too, and up here in the northeast, currently a sea of red, where we know already one of these red splodges has turned black. I expect we're going to see some more of these red splodges turn black over the course of the morning. But again, this is what happens when 1/3 of seats is up for election, as in many parts of England. We'll step over to London now. It's not in thirds. Every single seat in London was up for election yesterday. That's over 1,000 seats. And so we might see some of the most dramatic colour changes on this particular map. Might we see some of these outer boroughs go to Reform? Might we see some of these inner boroughs go to the Greens? Quite possibly. The Tories will be desperately trying to hang on to some of their outer boroughs, but also, crucially, let's watch Westminster, and we've already seen Wandsworth go into no overall control. That's the picture in England, but my goodness me, there's more in Scotland and Wales to come too.
Yep, so much more to come. Tom, thank you.
Let's talk to our political editor, Christopher Hope. Chris, what's the latest?
2 pieces of news, and big news. Reform UK has won its first council of these local elections. They're taking Newcastle under Lyme from the Conservatives. That's a big blow to Kemi Badenoch's party. And down in Wandsworth, historically a major Conservative seat in the past, Labour have lost control of that, and the Tories are 1 seat away from winning control of that. But as they stand, it's Tories 29, Labour 28, Independent 1. But bad news, Jack Rankin, for your party up in Staffordshire.
Well, obviously disappointed to hear about Newcastle there, Christopher, but delighted about Wandsworth. I've been on the doors in Wandsworth the past few weeks, and to gain 7 from Labour at the first time of asking is quite a feat, I would suggest to you. And I think we're positive about Westminster as well. It's a bit early to say for Westminster, but we're positive there. And we've seen other glimmers of positivity. I've been amazed by the Harlow result. There was 11 seats up for their Reform was saying they were going to win all 11, but in fact, we have taken all of those. So it's clearly a mixed picture, but I think where people have seen Conservative councils delivering those excellent public services, people have been rewarded.
Catherine?
I think it should be small comfort to take Wandsworth when the Conservatives ran Wandsworth from 1978 until 2022. So I think take your wins where you can get them, because I think they'll be few and far between.
Jack, could it be a sign of things to come in terms of county council results expected later? Essex, Norfolk, Suffolk?
Well, the last time most of those county council seats were contested, we were in a two-party politics world where we polled 43% on the vaccine bans. Now, you're looking at me sceptically, Stephen, but that's a perfectly reasonable thing. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to say.
Can you?
But it's true, isn't it?
We're in a different world, though, aren't we, Jack?
We are, yeah. So,
I mean, the point is, if we look
when they were for, we lived in a two-party system. We now live, arguably, in a five-party system, and votes are going all which way. So
and you will be the loser.
We need to concentrate. Well, all establishment parties are going to be the loser in a two-party to a five-party system. That's a pretty obvious statement.
But do you think it's a fair point then when Nigel Farage says, you know, left and right has gone, because Reform is taking votes from both the Labour Party and, so look at Newcastle-under-Lyme, and the Conservative Party. I mean, they're sucking up votes from both of you.
I think when it comes to a general election, people want stability and security. They don't want to go off to an extreme left with the Greens or extreme right with Reform. They want that security. So I think
the argument would be that they're not extreme right.
Well, I think when we see more of the policies coming through, then maybe we can make that assessment. At the moment, they're very thin on policies, and I think that the deflection we tried to see in the last week, trying to avoid talking about Farage's £5 million gift donation, whatever he decides to call it, by talking about putting asylum centres in green areas, is not the kind of sensible, serious politics that people want for a government.
Do you think, Catherine, I mean, Nigel Farage calls it the end of left-right politics. Is that right? He's overstating it. We haven't yet seen him really appeal to Labour before, but this could be the day it happens.
I don't think so. I think that it's so important that people see that stability and security, and I think that will continue to be from centre parties. And while I think I've laughed to see Robert Jenrick try and continuously describe Reform as a centre right, I actually think that the more Conservative MPs and councillors we see imported into Reform, the more they will actually lose support.
Well, Nigel Farage has also said that these local elections are a referendum on Sir Keir Starmer. Do you accept that?
Well, that's just not what has been shown historically, and I think that I think that if you look at election results for decades, when you are talking a couple of years on from a landslide, you expect this. What you don't expect is for opposition parties, and our main opposition is supposed to be the Conservatives. You don't expect that continued downward trajectory. So I think that it is a really concerning result that we're seeing for the Conservatives, but this is normal in election cycles to see a government party losing seats.
But it's interesting when you say, you know, historically these are a referendum on the Prime Minister, the party leader. But we're in different times, aren't we?
Well, I think that there is certainly...
Because I thought it was very interesting that a few minutes ago you were talking about how well Keir Starmer was doing on the international stage. Well, that may well be the case. But he's not elected on the international stage, is he? He's elected on the national stage.
I think what we have seen abundantly clear is that what happens on the international stage impacts upon the money that people have in their pockets. Now, we are lucky that actually it's the government action that has meant that inflation has come down and meant that we did see 6 interest rate cuts, has meant that borrowing has gone down, because that makes us better able to withstand the international shocks and conflicts that we are seeing. So what happens internationally makes a real difference to the cost of living, and therefore it's absolutely important that we have a Prime Minister that is able to show leadership.
Well, we're joined in the studio by the Reform MP for East Wiltshire, Danny Kruger. Good to see you.
Good morning.
This morning. It's interesting, our other two guests this morning, Jack Rankin and Catherine Atkinson, both saying this is nothing particularly
flesh wound.
Reform. You're thin on policies. You couldn't form a government. This is not going to reflect what's going to happen in 2029.
Listen, we've been hearing this for months now. The established political parties have been accusing Reform of not being ready, of not being serious, and of not having public support. And they've been saying, wait for the elections, wait for the voters. Actually, the voters can see through that. And what we've seen overnight and what seems to be happening today is seismic. And it just is what it is, guys, I'm afraid. It's a very tough reality for Labour and the Conservatives. But the fact is the public have decided they don't want the failed consensus of the last 25 years, the economic model that we've got, the social situation, the sort of disarray of our country and the scandal of open borders mean that the country is up in arms. And tonight was yet another chance that the public had. They had it repeatedly from the Brexit vote onwards. Every vote that the public have had, they've called for change. Even the 2024 election was a call for change. They asked for Starmer to deliver a different model. He failed. And now they're turning to reform.
What do you say to people who say local elections, protest vote is not the way that people would vote in a general election?
Well, listen, they'll keep saying that until it happens. I mean, they predicted that there wouldn't be a sort of populist breakthrough at every election, and it always happens because the public are serious. And yes, there's always noise and nonsense that goes on around an election, and lots of accusations are flung to and fro. But the public are looking beyond all of that, and they're saying we need a different model. We need a different sort of politics, one that takes these economic and cultural changes to our country seriously. And puts in place a serious, committed plan for change. And that is what is underway. And the public are looking at Nigel Farage and they say, for 30 years this guy has preached the need for a different model, a different sort of politics. Finally, he's the man that is going to deliver it. And they believe in him, they believe in us. And I'm really, really encouraged by what I've seen. It's still early days in the results, clearly. But overwhelmingly, it seems that the public are saying what we've been saying too.
Earlier on, Catherine, you said, obviously the Green Party is to the far left and Reform is to the far right. One of our viewers has been in touch, Nan Thorne, who says, how dare you call Reform voters extreme far right? We're English patriots.
I am not calling Reform voters extreme right. I think
just the party they're voting for.
I think that the frustration is there's nothing new in Nigel Farage. He was a Conservative, like so many of his MPs. More than half were former Conservative MPs. But he then was UKIP and then Brexit, and now we have got a further badge in Reform. And I do think that actually the more Conservatives they have joining, whether it's councillors or MPs like Danny, the more that they will alienate people who want to vote for something different, because it's the archetypes of what went wrong. It's not Jenrick was. Well, I think that what's really important in the local elections is that opportunity for scrutiny, and I think it is. I think you are going to get more and more people looking at their record in local government and what they're actually doing, concerned about the fact that the leader in Wales is now in prison for taking Russian bribes, concerned about the £5 million gift or donation, and concerned about Richard Tice and whether or not his excuses for what looks like serious allegations in relation to nearly £100,000 in tax avoidance.
But all of these stories are now old. The public have just had a chance to vote on them. Why are you ignoring what is going on in front of us overnight? Those stories are very familiar to the public, and they've decided they are peripheral to the main event, which is the change.
I think the scrutiny is hugely important, but I think it's also the same. We're seeing a lot more scrutiny in relation to the Greens, and I think that's not going so well.
OK, let's go over to our political editor, Christopher Hope. Got breaking news.
Some big news, as Jack Rankin was saying, might happen. The Tories have won back Westminster Council from Labour, as you said, so we were expecting some early results might favour the Tories. We've got that now, of course, with no vote or control in Wandsworth, but where they've won Westminster, big news there for Jack Rankin.
Well, I'm delighted to be making progress in Westminster and in Wandsworth. These are, as Catherine mentioned earlier, there are places that were flagship Conservative councils in the past, and I would push back somewhat on Danny's narrative in that there are green shoots of recovery for us, and you can see that there. And you can just see when we can demonstrate that we've got vitality in those seats and we get out there. These are serious times for the country, and I think we're putting the plan together at grassroots.
I mean, it's bad news for Labour if you're starting to lose councils in London, isn't it? I mean, it has been very much a stronghold over recent years.
only in most recent years, but I don't want to lose any Labour councillors. I know how hard they have been working and how hard they've tried to repair for the damage caused by Conservative austerity, and I do feel for each and every one of them. And it is frustrating when you do have some voters going to the Greens and splitting the Labour Party the vote and allowing other parties that many don't want to see back into power.
Danny, let's hone in, shall we, on Reform's big win in the past half an hour or so. First council of the night, Newcastle under Lyme. What's your reaction to that? Obviously looking ahead to other county council elections later, Essex, Norfolk and Suffolk. Are you hoping to...
Well, these are the sort of places that we would like to win. We want to win. They've been targets. Very encouraging, the Newcastle under Lyme win, a win from the Conservatives. And the fact is we are picking up votes from left and right, from people who want change. And that is what you need to do if you're a national party that aspires to national government. So, I mean, Catherine's right, many of us are former Tories, but we are winning support across the country. And that is very, very encouraging. And congratulations to the Tories for holding, for winning back Westminster and maybe grabbing hold of Wandsworth as well. The fact is the Conservatives are being driven back into their deep heartlands, into the fortress of traditional Tory support. They've done it because obviously the Labour vote has been split by a Green challenge. I don't think it's a huge endorsement of the Conservatives there, but good for them. The fact is, more broadly across the country, in places like Newcastle under Lyme, and I hope those eastern counties, we're seeing the real change that's underway, which is a huge seismic shift of support from traditional Conservative areas to Reform. Reform is the future. Conservatives are recognising that. And it's a shame we haven't got Jack on board yet, because I think he shares many of our values too.
Do you think you share values with Reform?
Well, I'm very happy as a Conservative. I was elected as a Conservative Unionist and I will remain one. And I regret that we did lose Danny. And I think that if somebody is going to defect like that, they should have the decency to call a by-election, if I might say so, Danny. I don't think that's an unfair comment to make. He says that the seismic change is going on throughout the country. My view is that what you're seeing here is effectively a lightning rod for dissatisfaction. I don't think the country are concerned about Nigel Farage and Reform. I think, as Catherine has made the point, when it comes to a general election, you're voting on your interest rates, your mortgage, your pension, and that takes serious work. And even though I totally concede that Mr Farage well articulates and is a phenomenal communicator of some of the dissatisfaction that I think people rightly share around this country, and Danny's right to say that I share lots of that dissatisfaction. When it comes to it, this is a serious time for the country, whether it's fiscally, whether it's on defence, and what we need is a serious politics, and I don't think we see that from the
Well, that's interesting.
We do see that, I think, from the authentic Conservative Party being led by Kemi Badenoch.
All right, that's an interesting point, Danny, because if Reform is only a party of dissatisfaction, then how do you change that perception? You've got to start by... I mean, I know you've put together a sort of shadow cabinet, as it were, but you've got to start delivering on more policies, haven't you? We need a stronger policy agenda if you're going to start winning people over properly.
Well, I mean, let me respond to that properly. I think it's a legitimate challenge. People want more than a party of protest. They want more than a campaign and a diagnosis of the problem. But that is what we are putting forward. We're still in the first half of this Parliament. We only have a handful of MPs, so we can't really front a formal, full range of front benches. But we are bringing in spokespeople from outside politics as well, and that's part of the job that I'm doing. So the preparation for government work that is underway, I think, will deliver a more comprehensive, fuller policy programme than any party that's challenged for power in recent times. And, of course, Jack's right. People want a serious party. I don't accept that the Conservatives, who I'm afraid to say have led the country into the mess that it's in, can rightfully claim to be the party of serious change.
Forgive me, but they'd level that at you.
That's right,
wouldn't they?
So exactly. So it is a legitimate challenge. Who can deliver the change that's needed? We are building a platform of policy and actual serious preparation in terms of personnel, machinery of government changes, reforms to the civil service. We're going to make government work. And I mean, we have been already setting out very detailed policies, more thorough policies, particularly in the space of controlling our borders, removing illegal immigrants, than the Conservatives. We're in a very similar place, on defence, on welfare reform. We are setting out serious policies in those areas. The public have a right to see that, so it's a legitimate challenge, and we're doing it.
OK, Danny Kruger, thank you very much. Well, we're joined now by former Lib Dem Minister Norman Baker. Morning to you, Norman. A mixed night, you could say, for the Lib Dems.
I would say it's a good night for the Lib Dems because we are. Yes, I'll tell you why. Because this is the 8th year running we are gaining councillors. So here is a party with government experience, unlike Reform and the Greens, who are actually gaining councillors while Tories and Labour shred them. We've gained Portsmouth, we've gained Stockport. In Richmond,
you've lost Hull.
We've won 54 out of 54 seats. We've wiped out the Tories in Sutton, and we're looking forward to the areas where we're really campaigning to gain control of council, such as East Sussex, which will be much later on. So we're very happy with what's happened, and I think we're the tortoise and the hare. 8 years of steady progress. No other party has managed that, and we possibly may end up at the end of this as a leading party in local government in terms of councillors.
Yeah, but I mean, look, you've lost hold to a reform surge. I mean, looking at the figures, you're on 237 at the moment. I know it's early days. You're up 36 seats.
Yeah.
So yes, you're in positive territory, but not massively.
We're in positive territory for the 8th year running, and most of our winnable seats have not yet declared. In terms of Hull, we had a majority of 1 only on the council, and we've lost 2 seats, which explains why we no longer have a majority on the council. But that's a very low loss. When you look at the losses across the councils for Labour and Tories, Labour's lost 3/4 of its councils at standing. Tories have lost more than half. We're up. We're up from the last time.
But you're not up as much as you may have hoped to have been up at this stage. And usually when mainstream parties aren't doing so well, Lib Dems have been the beneficiaries, haven't they? But not anymore.
Well, we are the beneficiaries because we may end up as the largest party in local government at the end of this. This is the 8th year running when we'll have gained councillors. And as I said to you, most of our winnable seats haven't yet declared. But I bet you the Tory and Labour Party would have bite their hands off to be up tonight where we are up.
It's interesting. I just wonder if you... I mean, look, you're absolutely right, Norman. You are in positive territory. You know, maybe not to the numbers that you would have liked. I still wonder, there's still a question, isn't there, about Ed Davey in all of this? I mean, how many people do we know anecdotally who say, I'd maybe think about voting Lib Dem, but it's Ed Davey that puts me off with his little displays of, stunts. I mean, it's not working that well, is it?
Well, it's working sufficiently well to give us a gain number of seats for the 8th year running and to pick up councils. Portsmouth, for example, was a Reform UK target, and we've won that instead. So, on the ground...
You should have a serious leader, though. I mean, look at Daisy Cooper, the deputy leader. We'll be talking to her a little bit later on. Yeah. I mean, she's a serious politician.
She is. I'd love to see Daisy leading the party at some point. Daisy, in fact, was a councillor in my old constituency of Lewis, and a very good councillor and now a very good MP. We've got some great MPs. Let's remember that we have got not just experience of government, which may be important after the next election, because the Greens and Reform don't have that, but we've got 72 MPs from the last election, and that gives us a huge swathe of experience which the others don't have. Let me just say one thing about percentages as well, because Labour have had a very terrible night. And people say they had a massive majority at the last election, which of course they did. But they only won 33% of the vote to get 2/3 of the seat under our first past the post system. Reform tonight are doing very well. They're getting 29% of the vote. So, you don't have to necessarily get a high percentage of the vote to win seats. And what we've done very successfully now, having been bitten very hard over decades, is to target ourselves to win seats. We're playing the first past the post system very well. So there'll be seats where we pull very badly, but there'll be seats where we concentrate our vote, like Richmond, where we got 54 out of 54 councillors tonight.
OK. Norman Baker, thank you very much.
Let's get the thoughts of the chair of the London Green Party, Eugene McCarthy. Good morning to you. It's nice to see you. I wonder, Eugene, what you make of your results so far. You are up, but perhaps not the surge that you were hoping for.
No, I'm actually very positive at the moment. The councils that were counting their votes overnight, we were expecting to go overwhelmingly to Reform, and indeed we have seen that. What I think will be interesting going forward today, I find it quite frustrating as a political activist. I love staying up all night and seeing the votes come in. A lot of councils are counting the votes during the day today and tomorrow. Those are going to be the ones where we're expecting to make our biggest gains.
But you haven't made the gains that you were hoping to do so overnight, but not quite the surge that was expected. Do you accept that this is in some part down to the controversy surrounding your leader, Zach Polansky, in recent days?
I want to be clear, we are up massively in areas of the country where we were not expected to win massively. We have performed very, very well in parts of the country where we have never performed well before. The areas of the country where we are forecast to win biggest will be announced later on today. And so far, looking at some of the vote shares that have come in wards where I know we have not been putting in massive campaigns on the ground, it seems very promising.
What about places like the sort of Oxford? You were expected to do well.
I haven't actually seen the results for Oxford. I know that there's a handful of seats there where we are strong and have been historically. But really, my eyes, I'm the chair of the London Green Party, are on London. The capital is going to be incredibly interesting for us. Last time round, we won just 18 seats out of 1,800 here. I'd really like to at least 10x that number of councillors. And I think that's, looking at the results so far, really quite possible.
Are you confident that Zach Polansky is the right leader for your party? He's got huge questions around authenticity. We've seen controversy in the past week. He's only been the leader since September.
I think actually it's really important you mention authenticity. I think, obviously he has had some hiccups, but the way he's approached them, I think he's tried to be really honest and forthcoming. With times he has made mistakes, often, 15 or 16 years ago, and accept responsibility for that. You don't get that from other party leaders. I mean, look at how Keir Starmer has responded to this whole Peter Mandelson debacle. Zach Polansky has been,
I mean, come on, Eugene. It's a bit of a stretch to say he's trying to be really honest when we know it appears to have made stuff up about being a spokesperson for the Red Cross, and let's not even go down enlarging ladies' breasts by thought control. I mean, honestly, you can't really say he's making honesty a priority.
I think if you compare his reactions, he is a normal guy. He's not a career politician really by any stretch of the imagination. And the way he has approached this is he's apologised. How often do you hear a politician apologise and accept responsibility? And I think that's really important. We can't expect our politicians, particularly, Zach Polansky is a younger generation than a lot of the other politicians, people who grew up in the internet age, to be completely spotless. If we have that, we'd end up with the most sort of wet white politicians around. I want people who have had experience in the world, have made mistakes, and can accept responsibility for that.
Was he right to criticise the police when it came to the Golders Green incident last week?
My personal view is I found it incredibly cathartic to watch that man's head getting kicked in. That's my personal take.
A man who was wielding a knife and had just stabbed two people.
Yeah, exactly. Very cathartic to see that. Yeah.
All right, Eugene McCarthy, I'm afraid we're out of time with you, but thank you very much for joining us on GB News Breakfast.
Right, let's get an update on where we are so far with Tom Harwood. Tom?
Yes, the map is beginning to look ever so slightly more colourful. Let's first start in London, where we've seen some of these big colourful blotches since we last saw the update on the map. We've got a blue splotch for the first time. Yes, the Conservative Party has won Westminster Council. Now, this is a significant advancement for the Conservatives. People were thinking they might just do it. They needed 2 seats to win off the Labour Party in order to take the council. In the end, they won 9 seats off the Labour Party. So the Tories will be very happy about that. And, of course, Wandsworth, the Tories 1 seat away from taking control of. There is 1 independent. It's likely that the Conservatives will control Wandsworth, although it's in no overall control. Interesting also to look at Richmond upon Thames, a Lib Dem stronghold, really. Interesting here because there were 5 Greens in Richmond. and all 5 Greens have lost their seats. It's a wealthy, leafy part of the country, and perhaps this Corbynite tack from the Green Party, which has gained votes in many other parts of the country, is losing the Greens some seats in some of the wealthier areas in which they had previously held them. But let's leave London there for a second and zoom out to the rest of England. We've got our first turquoise splodge on the map. Yes, this is, of course, Newcastle-under-Lyme, where the Reform Party have won the council. They've won 27 seats on that council. The Tories have lost 10 and the Labour Party have lost 17. All of those losses from the Tories and Labour going towards Reform. Interestingly, more Labour losses going to Reform than Conservative losses. It's interesting to look at Newcastle-under-Lyme because all of the seats were up for election. If we look at some of the other parts of England, whether it's up in Hartlepool or in Hull, I mean, only a third of seats were up in these cases, and every single seat in Hartlepool that was up for election went to Reform. It doesn't go turquoise because only a third of seats were up for election. It's a similar story, actually, in Wigan over here, which is a red splodge on the map. But every single seat that Labour was contesting in this election went to Reform. It stays as a red splodge on our map because only a third of the seats are up for election. This is a pattern that we're going to see in a number of places across the country, and yet there are some councils that are called all-out councils, where all those seats are up for election, and that's where we're more likely to see those turquoise splodges, because it does seem that Reform is advancing at a pretty rapid rate, but we're only going to see that where all of those seats are up for election.
OK, Tom, thank you.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock and breaking news today, and Reform UK has taken its first council of the election, gaining Newcastle-under-Lyme.
Nigel Farage celebrates a historic change, with Reform seizing a total of 333 seats so far. We've been speaking to Reform UK MP Danny Kruger.
The fact is the public have decided they don't want the failed consensus of the last 25 years, the economic model that we've got, the social situation, the sort of disarray.
Well, the Prime Minister takes a battering, with Labour hemorrhaging 246 seats so far, 247 actually now, a number that is expected to grow. In the last hour, Labour MP Catherine Atkinson has been telling us what a night it has been for her party.
For every single one of those Labour councillors who have served for so long, I am gutted for them.
Nigel Farage calls it a historic change. The end of left-right politics is being reset under the feet of the main parties. What will it mean for Keir Starmer and Kevin Badenoch?
It's the first real moment that voters get to answer one key question. Is this government delivering, or is it done?
Will you resign if Labour lose thousands of seats, Prime Minister?
It's been some shock news for the Conservatives. They've taken control of Westminster City Council from Labour, despite losing 126 seats so far. We spoke to Conservative MP Jack Rankin.
A two-party politics world, when we were polling 43% on the back of a vaccine bounce, we were always going to go backwards today, and I'm sorry about good, hard-working local Conservative councillors who've lost their seat, but that is the context.
Well, elsewhere, Zach Polansky's Green Party is still holding out hope of hoovering up seats across the capital. But with the majority of councils yet to be announced, do they fancy their chances too much?
And we're beginning to paint in the map of England. Yes, we're seeing splodges of colour, but a lot of black. What is black? Black is no overall control. Lots of these councils falling to our new five-party politics. And Scotland and Wales are yet to come in.
Well, the Lib Dems have held their results so far. Former Minister Norman Baker praising the party's gains.
We're the tortoise and the hare. 8 years of steady progress. No other party has managed that, and we possibly may end up at the end of this as a leading party in local government in terms of councillors.
Well, throughout the morning, we're going to have the latest analysis and we'll bring you through all of the peaks and troughs that will come to define England's 2026 local elections. And that's even before we get started on Wales and Scotland, with results set to trickle in throughout today. There's already fresh calls for the Prime Minister to quit, and the excitement is only just getting started, so you won't want to miss a moment.
It's just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Wow. I mean, it's been a fascinating night so far, and as we keep saying, a lot of these results are only going to be counted
so much more
today and over the weekend. So yeah, we're not going to get a full picture really till Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, I should think. Let's talk to our political editor, Christopher Hope. I mean, look, it's got off to an interesting start, Chris.
It really has. Labour losing control of its first 5 councils: Tameside, Essex, Exeter, Redditch, Hartlepool and Tamworth. Tameside, Angela Rayner's Ashton-under-Lyne seat sits in that. She'll know the councillors. They'll be saying to Angela, what can you do to help us? The concerns there. Of course, the Tories doing well so far, frankly. No overall control in Wandsworth, the historically popular, important seat to them, but winning back Westminster, and of course that big win at Newcastle-under-Lyme in Staffordshire for Reform UK. Nigel Farage, they're saying a historic change in our politics. Forget left-right. There's no more left-right. It's gone out the window. It's finished. We are exceeding in any way that we thought. Already chatter about the future of the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. We heard on this show how Catherine Atkinson said we shouldn't be kicking the pilot out of the plane mid-flight. Now we hear from John Healey. He's the Defence Secretary. He says this moments ago. He says, I think he can still deliver. He can still turn it round. The last thing I think people want to see is the potential chaos of a leadership election. So a senior cabinet minister admitting there could be a leadership election is a moment too.
All right, Chris, hang on in there, because we're going to talk to the Shadow Housing Secretary, James Cleverly, who is waiting for us. There he is. Oh, good to see you this morning. Look, where are we in all of this for the Conservative Party? 209 seats so far. You've won Westminster back, which is going to be a positive result for you. But you're still 125 seats down at the moment. You could have done better, couldn't you?
Well, look, this was always going to be a tough night for us. We knew that. I think everyone was predicting that. And what we have seen is a mixed picture. So, yes, we have lost some councillors, hard-working local champions, and that always hurts. But we've held on to seats like Fareham in Hampshire and Suella Braven's backyard, in taking control of Westminster. We've held Harlow, Broxbourne. So, look, it's a mixed picture. We knew it was a tough night because we are comparing these results with the results in 2022, where we'd come off that COVID vaccine bounce. And so we know this is hard. There's no point in pretending otherwise. But Kemi set out an agenda which is popular on the doorstep, and we will continue to get that message across to voters, and we know that that will be rewarded at the ballot box in years to come.
Issue is on the doorstep, I'm sure you've come up against this, Sir James, is whether the public can forgive you, because Kemi Badenoch is doing well in the polls, isn't she? Just last month, More in Common and YouGov polling ranked her the highest rated party leader, and yet the Tory party isn't enjoying that same popularity. Lord Ashcroft put it yesterday that Labour has a Keir problem and Kemi has a Tory problem.
Well, Kemi is showing that real energy and real ideas cuts through to the electorate. It is always the case that when the party is on the road to improvement, the party leader is at the forefront of that improvement. That's exactly what we're seeing here. And Kemi's personal success and popularity will help the Conservatives more generally. And I mean, it's understandable that she's the most popular. We're seeing the leader of the Green Party refuse to deal with the anti-Semitism that's riddled through his party. We've got Nigel Farage still having to explain that suspicious £5 million so-called personal gift, and Keir Starmer is deeply, deeply unpopular because basically he's consistently lied to the British people. And so I'm very, very pleased that Kemi is at the head of the party and is leading the party, because that's the job of a party leader.
Yeah, well, but I mean, there might be questions over other people, as you point out, but you look at where we are, and Reform is hoovering up votes from the left and the right in all of this, so far at least. I mean, it was an open goal for you, wasn't it? And this is the problem. You knew it was going to be a bad night, but someone is doing well out of this, and it's not the Conservatives.
Well, we've got to remember that the 2024 general election was less than 2 years ago. And the fact that the Conservatives are taking control of councils and holding on to councils in the aftermath of the worst national election defeat should be something we also take note of. Well, I recognise Reform are doing well in this election because they make promises, they make very appealing promises, which they then spectacularly fail to deliver. You look at Worcestershire Council, gone up by 9% when they promised to cut council tax. They've lost 70 councillors because wherever they do get elected, they get ejected by the voters because they are failing their promises. And look at, let's say, Peterborough, for example, recently elected Conservative mayor, really making a difference, and the voters recognise that and are rewarding that. So when Conservatives get back into office, we deliver. When Reform get into office, they fail to deliver. And that's the difference, and that's what we will highlight between now and forthcoming elections.
Right, but at this point in the electoral cycle, we would expect that the main opposition party would be hoovering up the votes. That hasn't happened. As we've seen, it's been a surge for Reform. Are we witnessing a reset of British politics?
Sorry, the statement you just made about at this point in the electoral cycle is factually wrong. We are 2 years
people treat it like a midterm.
from one of the most significant... Yeah, well, that's American term. That's not what's happening here. We
That's how many British people view it, and how many people choose to vote.
Well, no, that's not how it works. These are not American midterm elections. What we are seeing here is the selection for local government, people that deliver important public services. And what we have seen is where Conservatives are in control, we keep council tax down. We have the lowest council tax increases of any political party, irrespective of the nonsense that Reform claim about this. When Reform take control of councils, we see council tax going through the roof. We see civil war and infighting within the Reform groups. We see Reform losing by-elections time after time after time after time. We've got a job to do. We recognise that we've got a job to do. Kemi has set out our plan, and that plan is popular, and we are going to consistently deliver that plan wherever we're in control of councils, like in Westminster, like in Fareham, like in Harlow, like in Broxbourne. And when we do that, that is our road back into office at local government level and at national government level.
I know you're tight for time. Can I just ask you about the Prime Minister? Do you think he should go now, or do you expect him to go? John Healey, the Defence Secretary, was reported already this morning saying he can still turn it around.
Well, look, I thought Keir Starmer should have gone a long time ago. He has been consistently dishonest with the British people, both before the election, claiming that he would not put up their taxes, and about this whole Peter Mandelson affair. So, look, the fact that the British voters have now cast their verdict unambiguously about Labour and Keir Starmer, I think reinforces our position, Kemi's position, that he is not fit for office, either technically, because of the catastrophe we're seeing with the British economy, or because of a failure of integrity. So whichever you choose, he should be gone.
OK, so James Cleverly, thank you so much for joining us on GB News Breakfast.
We've got a panel here in the studio. Can I start with Danny Kruger, the Reform MP? Interesting, I know you couldn't hear what James Cleverly was saying as is the limits...
But I agreed with everything he said.
The limits of studio work. But he was highlighting Reform UK and the councils that they're already running. And so what you're getting is that making promises, but then they can't deliver. I mean, looking at places like Warwickshire, we're not going to put your taxes up. They've gone up 9%.
Listen,
and Peterborough, Kent. I mean, he's got an issue. He's got a point, hasn't he? That there have been significant problems in places where Reform have been running things.
I don't think it's OK after the election for politicians to keep accusing the public of not understanding what Reform stand for. And what we've seen actually is an endorsement of Reform, of our position nationally and our record locally. And locally, we inherited from Tory councils in particular, and Labour ones, totally broken public finances. Every council in the country has put up local council tax. We never made a public commitment to reduce council tax. Some candidates did, unwisely. But overall, we knew that council tax would have to go up. Actually, if you look across the country, the party with the lowest average council tax increases of all of them is Reform. And we are delivering significant savings, £700 million of savings in our local authority areas by cutting out waste. So actually, we have a programme for local government reform that is underway, that is being endorsed by people elsewhere in the country who want a piece of that. So I'm proud of what we're doing. And yes, we have a new challenge now with a whole bunch of new councils inheriting broken public finances there as well. Reform will deliver there too.
Can I challenge Danny on that? So he questions the cut taxes, and he says because the elections happened that it's not fair to hold them to account for that. But on the leaflets that Reform UK put out in my constituency, they said their local candidates would stop the boats. They said they would cut energy bills, and they said they would get Keir Starmer out. Now the local election results are going to do none of those three things. And I think a lot of Reform support comes from a general dissatisfaction with the two main political parties. I think I'd agree with Danny on that. But Reform are not going to be able to deliver on those three things in their local election results. And my concern is that will just feed dissatisfaction further. When I think about how we get Keir Starmer out, which perhaps Danny and I agree, perhaps Catherine and I disagree, the best way of doing that is fighting hard in Parliament. And Kemi Badenoch has been, whatever people think of her, holding Keir Starmer strongly to account in Parliament. And I think that's us doing our job properly. And I think some of the literature that we've seen from Reform UK, particularly in my patch, has been quite disingenuous on that.
I think it is important that we stick with council tax because leaflets across the country from Reform last year promised council tax cuts. We certainly saw them in Derbyshire, and then they've put council tax up. And I was on GB News previously with Richard Tice when I was saying they were going to put council tax up, and he shouted over me and said that was nonsense. They have put council tax up, and I think that their record in local government is hugely important. But where I would agree with Danny is that councils up and down the country were in massive financial difficulties, but that was because of years of Conservative austerity that Danny was a part of. And to see so many councils and MPs that are now wearing Reform rosettes, who were part of what actually put those difficult finances in place, they caused the problem, and I don't think there is any chance that they can be the ones to solve it.
Danny, did you cause the problem?
Well, I wasn't an MP during the austerity years, and I've got some issues with the way that was done. But the fact is, if we are going to relitigate the past couple of decades, what happened in 2008 was a financial crisis, and then we had a public finances crisis, and there were huge cuts necessary across the public sector. The fact is, in local government, we have a dysfunctional social care model. I think we can all just recognise the real problem with this. 60% of council money goes on social care, badly funded model. The result is that the things that people care about as well, like potholes, road repairs and other public services, get poorly funded. The answer to that is better management of the money that they have. That is what is needed. And I'm afraid to say, in Tory areas as well as in Labour ones, we have seen significant dysfunction in the way that councils are run. So we need better management. And, I'm afraid this accusation has been thrown at Reform for the last year, since we won those councils last time. The public do not accept the critique. Obviously, some candidates put out silly things on their leaflets without authority from above. Obviously, there have been some problems with some councillors misbehaving. which happens across the political spectrum. Every party has that problem. But what you see in reform-run councils up and down the country is serious people committed to making real savings, real improvements, cutting out all of the nonsense that councils have been indulging themselves in, declaring themselves sanctuary cities, having net zero fleets of vehicles and all the rest of it. All ramps up cost and diverts the attention of the council from the real priorities of the local community. That's what people want to change. That's what they get from reform. And this election overnight demonstrates that they see that happening.
What is really interesting is that they haven't got council tax cuts on any of their leaflets this time. So are they going to be putting them up even more?
And
when they've talked about when they've talked about kind of Doge finding lots of savings, which I think they certainly said they were going to be doing in Kent, the head of Doge in Kent then couldn't find any savings. So I'm not sure that's the way they're going to be able to solve things.
All right, let's leave it there just for the time being.
And let's head to GB News Deputy Political Editor, the man with the map, Tom Harwood, who is buzzing now on biscuits and fizzy pop. Morning, Tom.
Good morning. It's not an election night without an enormous map, and my goodness me, we've got several of them. But firstly, we should note there are 5,000 seats up for election in England yesterday. Only around a fifth of them have declared so far. So that's a big health warning ahead of what I'm about to say. But so far, out of all of the declarations of the seats in England, a third have gone to the Reform Party. In an era of five-party politics, that is a significant win for Reform. But why then aren't we seeing a huge amount of teal or turquoise across the country? Well, in many of these seats, only a third of the seats are up for election. In many of these councils, only a third of the seats are up for election. In some of them, only half. It's only in places like Newcastle-under-Lyme here, where every single seat was up for election, and the Reform Party won significantly. In fact, they won 10 seats from the Conservatives in Newcastle-under-Lyme. They won 17 seats from the Labour Party, and that took them to a total of 27, from a standing start to controlling the council in Newcastle-under-Lyme. We saw similar success from Reform up here in the North East. We've been looking at Hartlepool, we've been looking at Hull, where the Reform Party has almost had a clean sweep of the seats up for election, but in both cases only a third of the seats are up for election. So these councils are black on our map as opposed to turquoise because they've gone to no overall control, even though in Hartlepool the Reform Party won every single seat up for election. Well, it's not just Reform that's having a bit of a night. There have been some wins for the Greens as well. Let's go down to Exeter here. This used to be a red splodge on the map. It is now a black splodge on the map. There were 6 Green gains then. The Labour Party went backwards. There were a couple of Reform gains in Exeter as well, which might come as a surprise to some people, but that goes to no overall control. The Conservative Party is fairly happy with some of its retentions. We can look at Harlow here, a little spot of blue, and actually beyond where we've been looking at the rest of the country, let's zoom into London, because the Tories are particularly chipper about winning Westminster Council. The Labour Party won it last time. The Tories only needed to win 2 seats to win it back, and they picked up 9 seats from the Labour Party. So the Conservative Party doing well in central London. We might see a bit of a different story for the Conservatives in London than we do in the rest of the country over the course of the day. Also, the Conservatives doing well in Wandsworth. This used to be a red splodge on the map. It is now a black splodge on the map because the Labour Party lost 7 seats to the Conservatives in Wandsworth, and that takes the Tories to a tantalising 1 seat away from controlling the council. There is one independent on the council who I'm told is a former Conservative, so it looks like the Conservatives will control that council. Interesting also to look at Richmond upon Thames in London. Richmond solidly orange, golden, yellow, whatever you want to call it for the Lib Dems, has been for a long, long time. time. But crucially, interestingly, in Richmond, the Greens have lost 5 seats. Now, could this be because there was a pact between the Greens and the Lib Dems in years past that isn't there now? Partly, perhaps. But could it also be that the Greens have switched their tactic? Less cuddly Middle England and much more Corbynista, student first. We're seeing the Greens advance in student areas, but perhaps retreat in some of the leafier, wealthier parts of the country. Crucially, though, we are early doors. As I say, only around 1,000 seats declared out of the 5,000 to come in England. But it's not just England that voted yesterday, of course not. There's also Wales. Let's see if we can get our Welsh map up on the screen. Here it is. And for the first time, 96 seats available in the Welsh Senedd. That's up from 60 at the last election. It's a new electoral system of various multi-member constituencies. And crucially, there is a battle for first place. The polls suggest Plaid Cymru will have a remarkable advance to come first. And for the first time in 100 years, the Labour Party will not be the dominant party in Wales. The question is, will the Labour Party come second, third, or even fourth? It looks likely that the Reform Party will come second in Wales, although at the start of this campaign there was some hope among Reform ranks that they will come first. That is going to be one to watch closely. Also one to watch, Eluned Morgan, the First Minister of Wales. Some suggestion she might lose her seat as these votes are counted throughout this morning. Also, it's not just, of course, Wales. Scotland is one of the big question marks. Not a big question mark in terms of who's going to have the most seats. I think everyone's fairly settled that the SNP will win the most seats. Not yet confirmed whether or not they'll win a majority. It seems perhaps unlikely. There's a battle in Scotland, however, and it's 129 seats for second place. Who will come second place? Could it be the Reform Party? Could it be the Labour Party? This will be a particularly fascinating battle as these votes are counted, and the peculiar and difficult to haunt method of apportioning both the constituencies and regional list members in this confusing additional member system, we'll let the boffins get with their formulas and work out just how many seats are apportioned, not just in these constituencies here, but also for the regions too, adding up to 129 seats in that parliament. Well, so much to come, of course. We have had 1,000 declarations in England, but so far no declarations in Scotland and Wales. It's a busy morning of counting.
OK, Tom, thank you so much. Now we're just going to take a moment away from the politics and bring you this breaking news now. And a third British national has suspected hantavirus on the remote island area of Tristan da Cunha. That's the UK Health Security Agency bringing us this line.
Well, the ship where all of this has been going on is expected to dock in Tenerife on Sunday. According to the latest updates from the Spanish Health Ministry, UK government staff will be on the ground there to support British nationals as they disembark. British passengers and ship crew not displaying any symptoms of the hantavirus will be escorted by UK government staff to an airport and given free passage back to the UK.
Just a repeat of that breaking news. A third British national has suspected hantavirus on the remote island area of Tristan da Cunha. This is from the UK Health Security Agency. We'll bring you up to date on any developments on that throughout the programme.
Right, back to the politics then. What about the Lib Dems in all of this? I mean, so far they're looking at 237 seats, up 35 from where they were. Former Lib Dem Minister Norman Baker joins us. Morning, Norman. Are you satisfied with this, or would you have hoped to have done better so far?
No, I'm pretty happy because we're up. We're up for the 8th year running, which is an incredible achievement. And our best hopes are still to come. Looking at East Sussex, at Hampshire, in Huntingdonshire, places like this, where we think we can make substantial gains. They'll be announced later on. We've already held Eastleigh, we've picked up Portsmouth, we've picked up Stockport. We've now got, as Tom referred to, 54 out of 54 councils in Richmond. We've wiped the Tories out in Sutton. So we're very happy with what the picture is so far.
But not up as much as you hoped. You've lost Hull.
Well, we are up as much as you hope because, as I say, our main objectives are not yet declared. And you have to remember that we've seen the far left, if you like, of the spectrum with the Greens and far right with Reform. gaining, but we in the middle have been gaining as well. So that's a considerable achievement when there's been such polarisation in politics. As far as Hull's concerned, we had a majority of 1. We've lost 2 councillors, and therefore we're 1 short of a majority. The reform gains in Hull have been almost exclusively at the expense of Labour.
I know you'll find this a difficult one, but I wonder if reform is stepping onto your shoes a little bit, Norman, in that, I mean, previously, in previous years, if people have become disenchanted with the Tories or Labour, the Lib Dems have been the sort of middle ground to go to, if you like. But we know Reform are taking support from Labour and the Conservatives at the moment.
Well, they are, and they're doing very well in that sense. I think they're going to get 29% of the vote, roughly, so far. But, you know, we've got now, from the last general election 2 years ago, the largest number of MPs we've had for over 100 years. We've had 8 years of gains in terms of local councillors. We may end up as the biggest party in local government at the end of tonight. And what we've had to do, because of the first past the post system, is concentrate our efforts in particular places. And when we've dug into particular places, people like us and re-elect us. And we gain slowly by osmosis, if you like, tortoise in the hare across those sorts of areas. So there are areas of the country we're not very strong in. And Reform are obviously able to pick up votes, as indeed are the Greens. But in our areas where we're concentrating on, we're doing really well. And we will end up today with more councillors than we've had last time. And we'll end up with an 8th year running when we gain councillors.
OK, Norman Baker, thank you very much.
All right, let's get another Reform perspective on all of this. Danny Kruger may be in the studio, which we appreciate, Danny, but down the line is their Treasury spokesperson, Robert Jenrick. Good morning to you. You've got a smile on your face, Robert, I'll give you that. I mean, I'm not surprised. It's been a very good night.
Yeah, good morning. It certainly has.
What do you put that down to? What's winning through as far as Reform's concerned?
I think it's just an historic rejection of the two old parties that failed the country for too long in different ways. The Conservative Party promised that they were going to secure our borders and deliver a strong economy, but ended up delivering open borders and economic stagnation for working people the length and breadth of the country. And the Labour Party, they promised change, but they just delivered more of the same. And people have had enough. They can see the country is in a mess. They are stunned when they hear Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch deny that. And they are investing in Nigel Farage and Reform their trust to turn this country around, deliver wage growth, bring down people's bills, get crime down, secure our borders, lower immigration, do the things that they've been crying out for years and years, but neither of the two old parties were prepared to or had the backbone to actually deliver. So I think it's an incredible night. We'll see more phenomenal results over the course of today, and it gives Reform the platform that we need now to go on and hopefully to win the next general election.
Robert, what do you make of criticism that this is just the local elections? It's an opportunity for protest vote. It's not indicative of how people would vote when it came to a general election.
Well, only time will tell. But what you are seeing already, and I'm certain you'll see over the course of the day, is without precedent. You know, you're going to have to go back really to the beginning of the 20th century and the end of the Liberal Party and the rise of the Labour Party to see something as dramatic as this, where the most secure heartlands of the Conservative Party and the Labour Party collapsed and went to a party that didn't even exist just a few years ago. I think it's incredible what's happening, and it is responding to a deep sense of anger and frustration and disillusionment in the country that we all know, because most of us share that. We see that the country is broken and we all want real change. And it's quite clear that only a strong leader like Nigel Farage and a party that gets it, that understands the problems that face the country, is going to actually deliver that change. And that is what people are voting for right now.
But what you're going to face certainly when it comes to national politics, Robert, is what Danny Kruger here in the studio has had, put to him this morning as well. We've got obviously we've got every party represented, so you can imagine what's being thrown at reform. And a lot of the argument is, and I don't know how you get away from it, is the idea that if you attack the Conservatives and say, look what they did, you know, the borders were open, we had mass migration, there's been huge problems with all of that. It's the fact that you were both members of the Conservative government at the time. You were both members of the party. And so why then do we now believe you when you've switched allegiances?
Well, look, I've heard for several months this argument that a small number of Conservatives choosing to leave their party to put party loyalty to one side and get behind Nigel and reform would somehow damage reform. Look at the results. That argument is obviously being comprehensively debunked. People want change, and reform is bringing together people from all different parties and, above all, people who haven't been involved in politics at all in recent years. And that is what is different about this party. The Tory party, I said when I chose to leave the Tory party, it is dead. You know, it is dead. It is now just a regional party representing pockets of incredible affluence in places like Kensington and bits of Wandsworth. It's not the party of Newark, where I represent, or Wolverhampton, where I grew up. It is not a national party anymore. So if you want to get rid of Keir Starmer, and my goodness, the country has voted for that yesterday. If you want to get rid of this failing Labour government, you've got to do what Danny and I did, which is rally behind Nigel as a strong and principled man who has had conviction and consistency for 20 or 30 years on the big questions facing this country, support reform and bring about the real change that the country desperately needs.
Your main criticism, though, is that you're not ready for government. You need a strong policy agenda, you need a full shadow cabinet in waiting. There's a lot of work to do.
There is work to do, but we will be ready, I can assure you. People said that we wouldn't be able to achieve the results that we've clearly achieved today, just a few months ago. We've gone and done it. We've built an incredible party with 275,000 members, 5,000 candidates standing in more seats than any other of the political parties, and done unbelievably well. So do not underestimate reform. This is the most incredible insurgent party that our country has known for at least 100 years. We're building a very strong team. The shadow cabinet that's been created by Nigel today is to a man and a woman stronger than the cabinet or the Conservatives. It is a group of people who are totally united, who share this deep belief that the country has got to be fixed, that the next general election is the last chance saloon for this country. And so we're going to put in place the people, the policies, and build on the incredible momentum that we clearly have right now to go on and win the election.
Last time Nigel Farage was asked about any sort of pact with the Conservatives come the next election, he didn't dismiss it out of hand as he has done previously. Is it something you are actively considering? I mean, I suppose you could call it a united right, although Nigel said there is no left and right anymore. But is that something which is going to be on the cards come 2029 or before?
No. No, look, I don't believe there'll be any pact or deal. I don't think we'll need that. Look at the results you're seeing today. You know, sure, the Conservatives may have done slightly better than they did a few years ago in Westminster or Wandsworth, but these are tiny numbers of places. You know, I could count these constituencies on one hand. Reform is going to emerge over the course of the next 48 hours as all the results come in, as this country's only truly national party, a party that's able to win in the valleys of South Wales, in the towns and the cities of the Midlands and the North, the rural areas of the east of England, in places like Romford and Dagenham. You know, Reform obviously is the only party which has a viable route to win the next general election and to get rid of Labour. So the answer to anyone who wants to achieve that, and there are many, many millions of those people clearly across the country, is to get behind Reform. If you want to so-called unite the right, unite behind Nigel and Reform. But the point that Nigel made overnight was an important one, that the old left-right distinctions are falling away. Reform is a party that is bringing together people who have voted all their lives for the Labour Party and all their lives for the Conservative Party behind a simple mission, which is to fix the country. The country is in a mess at the moment. We want to get people's wages up. We do want to bring people's bills down, help young people on to the housing ladder, stop our high streets being hollowed out, stop all the crime that you're seeing, the sense of lawlessness in the country. And yes, ensure that once and for all we have secure borders and the farce of the small boats crisis comes to an end. If you share those values, if that's what you want for this country, it doesn't matter how you voted. It doesn't matter how your parents voted. Join Reform and make sure that we can have a party able to win and then to fix the country as soon as the next general election comes.
And just finally, Mr Jenrick, talking about the future of the Prime Minister, the Defence Secretary, John Healey, speaking this morning, he's backing the Prime Minister. What do you think? Does he need to go? And if so, who should he be replaced by?
Look, Starmer needs to go. This was a referendum on Keir Starmer, and the British public have voted overwhelmingly that they have no confidence in this man. He is the weakest Prime Minister that we've ever known. But will whoever replaces him be any better? No, I don't think they're going to be better. Whether it's Rayner or Miliband or Burnham, whichever non-entity takes over, it won't make any difference because the problems are still the same. They'll be captured by their backbenchers who don't want to do anything about the waste that we see, the out-of-control welfare budget that's making it impossible to bring down people's bills and their taxes, don't want to stop the madness of net zero that's raising people's energy bills and deindustrialising our country, don't want to get a grip on our borders. You know, some of those candidates want to sack the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, just because she had the audacity to do some pretty weak suggestions to improve our immigration system. It's not going to make any difference. What we need is a general election so we can get real change and have a strong leader in Nigel with a team around him that's capable of actually turning this country around and putting it once and for all on a path to greater success for the benefit of everyone in our country.
OK, Robert Jenrick, it's good to talk to you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Well, let's get the thoughts now. The chair of the London Green Party, Eugene McCarthy. Morning again to you, Eugene. Just looking at the results here, up 25 seats, but not quite the surge that the Green Party was expecting in the results so far. Do you accept that the controversies surrounding Zach Polansky in the past week or so have been damaging to the party?
I think it's yet to be seen, really. Most of the areas we have been campaigning hardest in are up, getting counted later on today. So far we've had a couple of areas where we are strong, been announced. Oxford, Reading, Exeter, all of these areas where historically, in terms of Exeter and Reading, we haven't actually been particularly strong in the past. We've made quite strong gains. Interestingly, looking through the results, a lot of the wards that we had down being really tight between Labour and Reform in these areas where we weren't targeting ourselves, Labour have actually managed to hold on, which is quite interesting and quite unexpected, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, the real test for the Greens is going to come at about 3 p.m. today when we get those borough results in London.
What you didn't do is manage to make any breakthroughs in places like Richmond, where, I mean, you did have representation, you've lost seats there. Is that a sense that you are changing your sort of base support away from perhaps those better-off people who sort of quite like some of your green ideals, to now you're becoming much more sort of studenty and hard lefty, if you like?
I think there's two interesting points there. Firstly, the last time these elections were up in Richmond was back in 2022. And for that election, we had a pact with the Lib Dems where they stood down for our candidates. So we managed to get in without really competing against each other. We didn't have that pact in this election. And the Lib Dems, if you see any map of London politics, that corner of southwest London is the Lib Dems have a real iron grip on it. So it's unfortunate we've lost some really good councillors there, but it's not unexpected. The other part is that, interestingly, you look at polling of who the Green Party's base is, and increasingly it's more and more working class voters. It's less of the sort of well-to-do, sort of leafy voters that you're talking about. That being said, we haven't seen vote share collapse in any of these sorts of areas, I mean, in local elections particularly, we have a reputation for working really hard. All parties like to say it, but I do genuinely think that, particularly in the past, you know, the Green Party, even at the moment, is only on about 15-ish% in the polls. No seats can be taken for granted, so we really have to put in graft to win. And I think that will serve us quite well.
What do you make of the school of thought that the Green Party has a limited electoral ceiling, if you like, because you are deemed to be so culturally radical that it would turn off moderate voters? Would you agree with that assessment?
I don't think so. I don't think we are actually particularly radical. I think that we are fairly transparent with what we believe. And, you know, compare us to what previous governments have done fairly dishonestly. I think they've been a lot more radical than what we've suggested. The only difference is that our policies are in the interest of actual ordinary Britons who have the hard graft going to work every morning, and not those who sit collecting rent and profits from sitting on their backside.
OK. Eugene McCarthy, thank you very much indeed. Good to talk to you. We've got a panel of MPs in the studio. Jet Rankin for the Conservatives, Catherine Atkinson for Labour, Danny Kruger for Reform UK. Danny, again, I know you couldn't hear him, but Robert Jenrick saying on the idea of some sort of electoral pact with your old team, the Conservatives. Not a chance, he says.
I'm glad he said that. That's the fact, yeah. I mean, there is a need to unite the right, and the way to do that is for people to get behind the party that can actually win the next election. I'm afraid, you know, sticking with the Conservatives now is an indulgence the country can't afford. And, you know, I have a great respect for many of my former colleagues, many of my friends locally, activists and members, but the fact is there is a shift going on, one of those shifts that happens every 50 to 100 years in our politics, whereby the party of the right is transformed, often takes a new name, new leadership, to face the challenges of the time. You know, there's been a fundamental alteration to the balance of our politics over the last generation, and the Tory party, I'm afraid, the old Tory party, needs to make way for the new force.
OK, Jack Rankin, let's bring you in. Does the Tory party need to make way for the new force? Because you couldn't hear, but Robert Jenrick said the Tory party is dead.
Well, Danny and I can agree that there'll be no deal between the Conservative Party and the Reform Party. Look, these are, whichever way you cut it, these are very serious times for our country, whether that is fiscally and our financial situation, whether that's in defence terms and how those two things are interlinked. And I think one of the two things that we've got to learn from the past period of time in office, Conservatives, is one, we need a strong, united team. We have that. We've lost a lot of the drama merchants to reform.
You've not got a reshuffle on the cards.
Well, that's well above my pay grade, Stephen. I don't know.
I mean, that's been rumoured in the papers, hasn't it?
Well, I think I don't want to believe everything you read in the papers. They have to sell these things, and that's always the rumour. We need a strong, united team, and we've got that under Kemi. We also need, I think, authentic conservatism around which we can unite. And so Danny calls Reform a party of the right, but I would suggest to him humbly that they're a populist party. For example, I don't know whether Reform are a big state party or a small state party. They're trying to win and they're winning well in historic Labour areas. I grew up in Tameside. That's one of the places that Reform have done very well tonight. Let me tell you, that is a big state place. So what do Reform stand for on the economy? What do they stand for on defence? I think these are things that are yet to be drawn out. But I think we should be going back to authentic Conservative principles, and that means being the party defence first. Also means being a small state party. And I don't think we can do any kind of arrangement with Reform. Whilst those questions, there's still question marks over that.
The one thing we've heard from a lot of our guests down the line, Catherine, is that this has been a referendum on the Prime Minister. We've heard that time and again, I know you can't hear it, but we've heard that time and time again from our guests from other parties.
Well, and I think,
in which case, it's been a resounding time to go.
Well, I think that the other parties would say that, wouldn't they? And I think that what Chris and I have been setting out is the very clear history that you don't need to be a historian to be able to see. When we see a change of government, you then, after a couple of years, then see that governing party getting a kicking in local elections. We saw it after the Labour landslide in 1997, when in 1999 Labour lost 1,150 councillors. They then went on to win 2 more general elections. So the idea that this is somehow new or surprising, the Conservatives didn't win any local elections between 2011 and 2014, and they won the general election in 2015.
But the difference with this one is that Keir Starmer is an historic low. He is the most unpopular Prime Minister we've had.
The difference in this one is what actually tends to happen a couple of years after is that the main opposition party increases their seats. And for the first time, what we are seeing is that actually the Conservatives, who are supposed to be the main opposition, are losing seats. So that is a downward trajectory that we continue to see. But you are absolutely right to put to Robert Jenrick the issue in having now Reform MPs like himself and like Danny lambasting the Conservative record when they were part of that record, when they were in power in the Conservative government. Robert Jenrick was the immigration minister that bragged about increasing the number of asylum hotels. He was a health minister when they were bringing when they were bringing the NHS to its knees.
But he also quit on principle, didn't he? From
Did he quit on principle or did he jump ship? I think that many will argue about that. And did he quit after things were leaked in the most shambolic defection I have ever
He resigned
seen?
from Rishi Sunak's government.
Yeah,
he and I both broke the whip in the last Parliament to rebel against the Tory party's failure. And the fact is, since then, I'm afraid to say, there has not been a sufficient correction. So we decided in the end to give up on the party altogether. But we are not complicit in the failures of the last government because we spoke out against them. We resigned, we broke the whip. We stuck by our principles.
More than half of Reform MPs now are former Conservative MPs, and we were talking before about Reform being a party of dissatisfaction and grievance. The idea that a Reform party full of Conservatives bear the solutions to the problems that they caused is absolutely ridiculous.
OK, let's bring in our political editor, Christopher Hope.
Well, Catherine Elsewhere, Baroness Aisha Hazarika, has just said this: there's a real chance of Nigel Farage becoming Prime Minister. What do you say to that? Is that a real reality? This is what's happened next? The next step is him getting to Downing Street?
I certainly will be doing everything I can to stop that happening, because I think that what we have seen time and time again is that when Reform have actually got power in local councils, things have gone the wrong way. It hasn't gone what they did have all over their leaflets, that they were going to cut taxes and improve services. We have seen the absolute opposite. And I think it does bear really important scrutiny on Reform and to what they actually do and what they say. And I hope that the more we see of them, the more people won't want to go down that path.
I'll tell you what I'm always intrigued by with this sort of thing, though, is this sort of level of honesty and transparency. Because you all come on, and we know it's how politics works. You've got your party lines and you toe them. For Aisha Hazarika to say what she said, I've done it for a long time, and she just say what she thinks. Isn't that the sort of level of honesty we need, rather than, and with the greatest of respect, towing the party line, saying it's all going to be fine, we'll turn this ship around? Because people watching and listening to this won't necessarily believe you. This sort of thing, here's politicians coming out with the same old stuff again. No, it's not been that bad.
Aisha Hazarika is a very talented Times journalist, and I'm sure that she will be asking a lot of questions of Labour Reform and Conservative politicians on her show as well. But what we have seen historically is that when it comes to a general election, you cannot take local elections as determinative of what happens. It's just not the case.
You see, I'd put the same point to you, Jack, in terms of that sort of level of honesty and not just towing the party line.
Yep.
Transparency. You know, it's the Conservatives have almost been forgotten about in this election.
No, when people went to bed, they were expecting us to be losing places like Basildon, which we've held, and instead we've gained in Westminster, and we've got exactly half the seats in Reform the administration in Wandsworth. They're two marquee councils. Now, we're in the foothills of a rebuild, and it's a long time to go, and clearly people have not gone through a process of forgiving the Conservative Party yet, but we are at the foothills of an authentic renewal under the leadership of Kemi Badenoch.
Or is the brand broken?
Well, I don't accept that. It's clearly battered. That is an obvious truism. And what we need to do is where we went off course in in government was we weren't authentic to our principles. Now, whatever you think of Kemi, she is absolutely a leader with a backbone, and she absolutely, whether people like it, like what she says or not, she knows exactly. People know exactly where they stand with her. So I'm confident that we're getting the foundations right in Westminster. And when it comes to that general election, clearly Reform have done well tonight. But when it comes to a general election as opposed to a local election, you're voting on your pension, you're voting on your mortgage, you're voting on your interest rates. So my party still has to internalise the election result, the general election result last year
Wouldn't you trust,
and today.
Why wouldn't you trust
but
Reform
it's a
with
process.
that? Why wouldn't you trust Reform with that?
Well,
I mean, the implication of what the implication of what you're saying is, well, you can trust the Tories with the economy, you can't trust Labour with the economy, but you can't trust Reform with the economy.
What is Reform's policy on the economy?
Well, I don't know, but everyone else has messed it up so far.
Yeah.
So
and more than half of their MPs were Conservatives, so I don't bear much hope.
I wonder if you've all sort of get your head around the fact that there are a lot of people in this country who just say, we've tried everything else, it's been a mess, let's give them a try.
Yeah, and clearly that is the headspace of lots of people. But I would
Which is an indictment on you two, isn't it? Complete indictment on you two.
Well, it's only 2 years past our worst election result my party has ever suffered. Clearly, it's going to take some time for us to get back on our feet.
But at this point in the election cycle, you should be picking up seats and you are losing them. And I thought it was really interesting that Stephen was asking about potential coalitions. But you've both been talking about defence policy, and I think record matters. The fact that more than half of Reform MPs are Conservative MPs matters, because with the Conservative record, my husband served in Afghanistan, I am absolutely livid at the state the Conservatives left our armed forces. Their own former Defence Minister, Ben Wallace, acknowledged that they had hollowed out our armed forces. We saw a cut of 50,000. We have not been, we saw it back to Napoleonic times in terms of the number of people in our armed forces. The last time that defence spending was up at 2.5% was under a Labour government in 2010. We are putting the defence spending in, and we're having to repair because what was it, 1 in 5 boats that ended up being out of service. How many of 200 RAF planes were out of service under the Conservatives? I think the fact that they say they're on the same page as defence should give this country, in light of where we are internationally, absolutely no confidence whatsoever. Well, that's not what you've shown in the past.
No, listen, what we are committing to is a significant upgrade, not just in our overall budget, but in the model of procurement, which is the great scandal of the MOD under both governments. But the fact is, you are in government now, you've been there for 2 years, we are still waiting for the defence investment plan in order to deliver this headline commitment that you've made, which, by the way, is still not going far enough. The fact is the Labour Party is completely paralysed. The inability to take money from the welfare budget, which is what absolutely needs to happen in order to invest in defence. You can't do it because your own party will not let the government do what is needed. So where are the welfare cuts? You can't do those. Right. Where is the defence investment?
I'm a Derby MP. We build the nuclear reactors that powers our at-sea nuclear deterrent. You certainly don't need to talk to me about wanting to ensure we have the right defence spending, and it is this government that has put £9 billion into paying for those nuclear reactors for our submarines. But you cannot get away from the fact that you are part of the government that had made absolute disgusting cuts to our armed forces, and the way that it treated veterans as well.
I was only an MP for the last few years in which defence spending went up.
I think that in terms of the investment that we're seeing in terms of support for veterans is something that I'm really proud of. I think that the way that the accommodation for armed forces was left was disgraceful. I think that the fact that veteran homelessness rose by 14% in 2023 is disgraceful, and I think that the fact that the support for employment for veterans was halved in 2023 is disgraceful.
Your viewers should understand this, right? At the end of this Parliament, Rachel Reeves is forecast to be spending £60 billion a year on defence. She's forecast to spend £400 billion a year on welfare. Danny is exactly right that this government cannot cut welfare. And the problem with this result today is it's going to leave Keir Starmer in hock to his left-wing backbenchers.
Well, maybe your discussion of coalitions isn't so far from the truth, then.
They're not going to be able to cut welfare, and they're going to make even worse decisions for our economy, and that's the danger of today's result.
All right, all three of you, thank you very much indeed. We'll chat in a little while.
In the meantime, let's go to GB News Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood, who's having a wonderful time at our media wall. Morning, Tom.
It's not an election morning without a massive map, and we've got more than one massive map. We've got three of them. We're starting to fill them in with some colour, although some people might be a little bit surprised that it's not as colourful as you might expect. Take Hartlepool up here in the northeast. The Reform Party won every single seat up for election in Hartlepool. Why then haven't we coloured it in turquoise for the Reform Party? Well, because only 1/3 of the seats were up for election. I mean, it's the same situation in North East Lincolnshire. Reform won all but one seat up for election on this particular council, but again, only 1/3 of the seats were up for election, so we've coloured them in black for no overall control. In fact, a lot of the black on this map covers up a lot of the advances that Reform has made in councils where not every seat was up for election. The same is true for a swathe of Essex here. Reform has advanced in Basildon and Billericay, for instance. In fact, we have to go all the way over to Newcastle under Lyme here to find our singular turquoise splodge so far this morning. Now, this is Newcastle under Lyme. The Reform Party won 27 seats from a standing start. They took 10 from the Tories and 17 from the Labour Party, taking control of the council. But we should expect that where councils are having all of their seats up for election, we might see more turquoise on this map as counting continues. As for the Tories, it's been a disappointing night in lots of the country for that party, but they do point to some splodges of success. Look down here. This is a seat called Fareham. Now, this is interesting because this is Suella Braverman's seat, and Reform might have expected to make some advances here. In fact, Reform only won one seat, and the Conservatives have held on there in Suella Braverman's seat. Does that bode any expectations for what the next general election might look like? Maybe, maybe not. Let's jump across to London very quickly. The Conservatives have taken Westminster Council here, and it looks like they've taken control of Wandsworth, although no overall control. They are the largest party on Wandsworth Borough Council. Interestingly, though, we are still waiting for so many more results. Of course, of the 32 London boroughs, we've only had a handful in so far. Reform is expecting to make advances out there in the east, the Conservatives expecting to hold in the west. Could the Greens come through in the middle? That is still remaining to be seen. Lots more to come as the morning continues.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock and the breaking news is Defence Secretary John Healey has backed the Prime Minister despite a night of disaster in the local elections. Labour losing 249 seats so far. It comes as Reform has gained its first council in Newcastle under Lyme from the Conservatives.
Well, Reform's Treasury spokesman Robert Jenrick told GB News Breakfast in no uncertain terms that the Prime Minister should resign.
Look, Starmer needs to go. This was a referendum on Keir Starmer, and the British public have voted overwhelmingly that they have no confidence in this man.
Well, stay with us this morning because we're expecting Nigel Farage to speak imminently.
The other story this morning, a shock result in Westminster where the Tories gained the council from Labour. Shadow Housing Secretary Sir James Cleverly reacted to that result.
We have lost some councillors, hard-working local champions, and that always hurts. But we've held on to seats like Fareham in Hampshire and Suella Braverman's backyard, in taking control of Westminster. We've held Harlow, Broxbourne. So look, it's a mixed picture. We knew it was a tough night.
Well, we're also expecting to hear from the Prime Minister any moment now. We're at Downing Street, ready for the reaction. In the Labour camp, MP Catherine Atkinson has been telling us that it's not been a good night for her party.
For every single one of those Labour councillors who have served for so long, I am gutted for them.
Labour peer Baroness Hazarika says the real chance that Nigel Farage could become Prime Minister. How will the PM react to that? A real crisis for this Prime Minister.
Elsewhere this morning, Zach Polansky's Green Party is still holding out hope of hovering up seats across the capital. With the majority of councils yet to be announced, do they fancy their chances too much?
Just over 1,000 seats have so far been declared in England, but that's out of a total of more than 5,000. We're at the foothills of filling in our map. Could there be more turquoise, more red, more green, more blue, or more orange? Stay with us.
Well, the Lib Dems have hailed their results so far, with former Minister Norman Baker praising the party's gains.
We're the tortoise and the hare. 8 years of steady progress. No other party has managed that, and we possibly may end up at the end of this as a leading party in local government in terms of councillors.
Well, as we say, do stay with us. We are expecting to hear from both the Prime Minister and Reform UK leader Nigel Farage any moment now. And here at GB News HQ, we will, of course, have the latest analysis for you. We'll bring you all of the crucial results that will come to define England's 2026 local elections. And that's before we even begin to consider Wales and Scotland, with results set to trickle in later on today.
It has just gone 8 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
It's been a bit of a sort of hectic night. It's going to be a hectic couple of days.
Yes.
Thankfully for us, our political editor, Christopher Hope, is not planning on any sleep till at least Monday morning either, Chris. I mean, this is already proving to be fascinating.
It is.
What we end up seeing by Sunday afternoon, I don't know.
We're a long way to go. We've got 1 in 5 council seats reported. We haven't even got into Scotland and Wales. That's this afternoon. It's a big night, a big day for the teal-coloured party, Reform UK. They've won Newcastle under Lyme. They've won seats on Hartlepool, Tamworth. They are doing extremely well. Nigel Farage says it's a historic change in British politics. He's forecasting winning in Essex, Norfolk, Suffolk. It looks like they've won around 29% of the vote, which is the same number they won at the Gorton and Denton by-election. It's not quite enough to win the majority they want at a general election. That's more like 32%. But it looks like they are holding firm, and the other parties are down in the late teens, 19% for Labour and the like. It looks like that's where we're going with the English results. And I think that is so interesting, that what is response for the other parties? There is a shift, I think, below our left-right politics. The Farage said as much, forget left-right, there's no more left and right. And Reform UK is making all the ground. I'm intrigued by what Danny Kruger's saying on our show. He says that there's a realignment on the right of politics, but what about the left too? Because this party is claiming to take support from Labour, but the other parties, well, I mean, Labour lost control of 8 councils so far, Tameside, Essex, Redditch, Hartlepool, and so it goes on. I think we'll be hearing very shortly from Daisy Cooper, of course, Lib Dem's deputy leader.
Well, I'll tell you what, Chris, seeing as you've teed her up, should we talk to her right now? Daisy Cooper, good morning to you. I mean, look, you're in positive territory. As Norman Baker's been telling us, you know, you've gained seats for the 8th time in a row, up 36 at 241 at the moment. So congratulations on that. But the question remains is, you perhaps should have been looking to do better, shouldn't you, by taking disenchanted Labour and Tory voters, but instead they've gone to Reform.
No, I think you can see that in some areas we are winning over those people. Take Stockport, for example. We've won seats off both the Conservatives and Labour and taken control of that council. In Hull, for example, we are still in pole position there. We've seen off the threat from Reform and won a seat from Labour. So there are lots of examples of where we've won from the Conservatives, for example, in Sutton, where we've won some seats off Labour, as I say, in Stockport and in Hull. We've taken 5 seats off the Greens in Richmond. So we are fighting and winning against all the other political parties.
But you've lost Hull, which must be such a disappointment.
Sorry, I missed that.
You've lost Hull, which must be such a disappointment.
Well, we had only been holding Hull with a majority of 1, and we've lost just a couple of seats. So obviously it is disappointing, but we have nonetheless managed to hold on to becoming to remain the largest party and to see off the threat from reform, where they've been targeting that area really hard. Same in Portsmouth, for example, where Liberal Democrats are now running Portsmouth. Reform through absolutely everything at that campaign, every single kitchen sink you can find, and we Liberal Democrats still saw off the threat from Reform UK. So in the areas where we are digging in and delivering well for communities, we are doing really well in these elections so far.
Yeah, it's down to expectations, isn't it? As I say, you've got plenty to crow about because you are in positive territory, which is more than most other parties are looking at. I mean, the Greens are up a little bit, Reform up an awful lot in all of this. But it's about expectations. It's about thinking you're going to make some sort of breakthrough, because is anyone, when it comes to a general election, going to treat you as anything other than a minor party? Still, you've never made that big breakthrough, and it doesn't look like you are doing this time round.
Well, let's wait and see what comes in around tea time. I think when you see the results maybe from East Sussex and West Sussex and East Surrey and West Surrey, and perhaps a few surprises in a few other areas, I think you'll see that we are growing, we are digging in, and we'll be on course not just to defend the number of seats that we have, but to gain some at the next general election as well.
Are you confident that Sir Ed Davey is the right leader for your party? Many viewers get in touch with us all the time saying they will never forgive him for his role in the post office scandal, and then others say they can't take him seriously, they find him a joke, and all of the stunts that we see usually on the water ahead of elections. Many people saying that you're the serious candidate and that you would be a much better leader of your party.
You know what? Ed is an economist. He's a former climate minister, an energy minister, and he's also a carer. And I don't think I can think of anybody else in Parliament who is more qualified to deliver for people, for planet and for profit.
You don't want the top job,
Ed is an incredibly intelligent guy. He's got huge leadership. Ed has got a huge leadership experience. He's doing a fantastic job. He's led our party to become the largest it has ever been in the party's history. I love working side by side with Ed. We make a strong leadership team, but he is the right person to lead us into the next election.
All right, Daisy Cooper, appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed. What do you make of it all, Chris? I mean, it's not been a bad night for the Liberal Democrats. Of course it hasn't. You know, they've made gains. But it's just this idea of breakthrough, because when we talk about the system being toppled, if you like, this major overhaul of the political system in this country, it's not being driven by the Lib Dems, it's being driven by reform.
Once again, they're observers, aren't they, to someone else's political revolution, if that's what happens, and we'll wait and see how the day plays out. They've done well in Richmond. They've won support from Greens. Of course, there was a deal done back in last time that was contested. Held Eastleigh, lost Hull, as you say, and won Sutton from the Conservatives. It's interesting that the Greens aren't doing as well as we thought, and that's benefiting the Liberal Democrats, the protest party. I think the Greens are changing into almost a Corbynista party, and that is, for some of the traditional Green support, they're going, well, is this a party I was once a member of? And maybe the Lib Dems benefit from that. But yeah, it's hard to find the good point, I think, for Lib Dems at the moment.
Can we talk about the Greens? Because we haven't mentioned them too much this morning. Do you think the controversies surrounding Zach Polansky in the past week or so have really damaged them?
It does seem that way, and I think a good question to ask him when we get them back on is, is he now weighing down your support? He's done so well since being elected leader last September. Members gone up by fivefold to 250,000. But look what's happened in recent weeks. Questioning the police response to the Golders Green attack, that was not great. Other question marks about his past, what he's done in the CV, his CV about being a spokesman for the British Red Cross, the issue about the breast enlargement, which he says he was stitched up by a tabloid journalist, but said it again to the BBC shortly after that. So, who is this guy leading this party?
Okay, and all these
Many are
I
asked.
spotted yesterday, you know, all these films he was in.
Yeah.
He's an actor, and but it is extraordinary that he's sort of come from nowhere in our public consciousness, to suddenly being seen as this very charismatic leader, who's taken the Greens onwards and upwards. But the one thing they don't seem to talk about particularly are green issues.
No, that's what's, I think, upsetting is the traditional base of the party, and maybe they're cleaving away towards where the Lib Dems are.
It's quite an interesting shift, isn't it? Let's bring you both back in, Catherine and Jack. Jack, what do you make of what we've seen so far tonight?
Well, I think lots of people went to bed thinking that it was going to be a very terrible night for the Conservatives, and you know, it's not been obviously unalloyed success, but we've done well in Westminster. We've gained that. We needed to win 2 seats. We've won 9. I think that was against the bookies' expectations. And we've put 7 seats on Wandsworth. So these are real marquee gains for the Conservative Party. It is, I will accept, something like our historic heartlands, but we need to, you know, build off the back of a historic election defeat at the general election. And these are the foothills, I think, of us building towards the next general election under Gary Badenoch's leadership.
Red Wall, Catherine, Wigan, Bolton, Salford, Halton. I mean, all Labour all losing lots of support. I mean, the swing there from Labour to Reform has been absolutely enormous.
And I think, as we have been discussing, after a general election, when you see a new government, you do see, and that's what we've seen consistently for decades, that government party then not doing as well. And I am gutted for every single one of the Labour candidates and Labour councillors who have served for years.
But you've forgive me, and look, I mean, I know historically there's stuff to back you up with all of that, but the circumstances we're in at the moment, and the swing that you're seeing in these, you know, Labour heartland areas, you've got to actually come away from that and take a cold, hard look at it and say, what are we doing? What are we not getting right? What message are we not getting across, surely?
I think, of course, we always need to be listening, and I think that is absolutely essential. But in 1999, Labour lost 1,150 Labour councillors. The Conservatives didn't win local elections from 2011 to 2014 and then won the general election in 2015. So you cannot take local elections. But I do think what's been really interesting to talk about the Greens, as you have been, because I do think that they will be disappointed with what they're seeing so far. And what I think is notable is that they've been a party for 50 years. They've run councils. And what they never talk about is their record. They never have anything positive to say about what they've done when they've actually been in power. And yes, of course, I'm concerned about some of their policy positions. I'm hugely concerned about legalising Class A drugs, including crack cocaine. I'm hugely concerned about their position on our nuclear at sea deterrent and on NATO. But we're also seeing, even where they're not actually being able to win, they are splitting the Labour vote and letting Reform in. So I am still concerned about the part that they are playing, but I do think they'll be disappointed with what we've seen so far.
OK, Catherine, thank you very much. Well, let's head now to our reporter, Jack Carson, who joins us live from the Utilita Arena in Birmingham. Morning to you, Jack. What's happening?
Morning to you. Well, we are strapping ourselves in for what will certainly be quite a long day here in Birmingham. We're expecting counting to get underway hopefully around 9 o'clock today, but there are 101 councillors to be elected here in 69 different wards. It is a full Birmingham City Council election, and this is an election where the campaigning points have been Palestine and potholes, bins and bankruptcy. It has been quite a divisive election across this city on some of the campaigning points, and some candidates utilising some of those points more than others. And so we're really looking, because even polling itself has been completely different across this council. Some polls have Labour still being the largest party but losing their overall control of this council. Others have, and more recent polling, have Reform being the largest party and just shy of the 52 needed to have a majority on this council. So we really don't know beforehand exactly how this is going to go. What is clear, though, is that Labour look like they are going to lose a lot of support across all areas of this city, particularly the inner city. That is where we know independent alliances, the Workers' Party, places like that campaigning on tickets involving the issues surrounding Palestine and the British government. They really have been big issues in those more inner city areas. But then you get a split because the outer city areas are places where some of the raise the flag, raise the colours movement started, where we started to see Union flags flying on lampposts. That was the outer city of Birmingham, where all of that movement started a little midway through last year. So this city is divided on really what different areas see as the most important issues for them. Ultimately, though, seemingly there is a unifying factor in all of this campaigning between the different parties, and that is how to end the bin strikes. We couldn't talk about it too much during the election campaign, but Labour announced about 10 days out from the election that they had organised a deal to be able to end the bin strikes if they were to be re-elected. Unite said, however, though, that was a deal which any party could use as the basis of negotiations of how to end that strike. These bin workers have been out on an all-out strike since March last year. The council have been having to spend millions of pounds on other companies to be able to collect waste services around this city. The last council had put in a plan in place to try and change the way that recycling and waste was collected around Birmingham, including moving to more 2-week collections. A lot of the parties around this city have used that as a campaigning point to try and say that they'll bring collections back 1 week. So we really are in a mix of real local issues, but also more international and global issues affecting our politics here. If we reflect on some of the other results around the West Midlands overnight, the big real headline really is Newcastle-under-Lyme and Reform taking that, winning 27 seats on that. That was a Conservative-led council for some time, almost 10 years. The Conservatives down 10 seats, losing their majority. Labour down 17, and Reform, as I said, winning 27 to take the majority on that council. Elsewhere around this region, Reform making gains in Redditch, as well as Labour losing Tamworth as a majority because of Reform gaining 9 seats there. And in Dudley, the Conservatives started with 34 seats. Only a third of that council was being elected today. The Conservatives started with 34, now down to 27. Reform gaining 22 out of the 24 seats possible. So why in the wider West Midlands, Reform have been making huge gains. If you look really at what Birmingham and the West Midlands is politically, it is part of that Labour working class kind of traditional red wall, and those voters moving, and actually, as you're seeing in the likes of Tamworth, in the likes of Newcastle-under-Lyme, voters leaving Labour to go to Reform, as well as leaving Conservatives to go to Reform. So in the wider West Midlands, there have been huge results for that party. But as I said, here in Birmingham, we don't know, quite frankly, what is the independent alliance that we've seen across the more inner city and the wider areas of this city going to be. Is the Conservative vote going to hold up against the threat of another party on the right like Reform? It is going to be a very exciting day, and we're strapping ourselves in for a long one here in Birmingham.
But you are. Jack, thank you very much indeed. Just to remind you, Nigel Farage, we're hoping to hear from him very shortly. In the meantime, Danny Kruger from Reform UK is here. You have to stand in for Nigel. Just for the time being, Danny, if that's all right. I'm intrigued slightly by Birmingham and these full council elections. I don't know quite how many there are across the country, but I certainly know there's Birmingham, there's Milton Keynes. Oh, Chris has got a line.
So Keir Starmer has spoken for the first time since these results started emerging. He has said this: days like this don't weaken my resolve to deliver the change that I promised, i.e. he's going nowhere. Now expecting him to speak to cameras at some point shortly, but to reiterate there, days like this don't weaken my resolve to deliver the change that I promised. That means that he's not going anywhere. As we heard there from Catherine Atkinson, the party believes no point in ejecting a pilot mid-flight. The problem is, where's that destination of the plane is flying?
And is that tone deaf, Catherine? I mean, we're hearing Sarah Sackman overnight on GB News saying we just need to give the plan time. David Lammy, speaking this morning, says we just need to move faster. How can you take a vote like this and see that from the public as an instruction to move faster?
I think, as I have set up, this kind of a result for a governing party is what we see every time a couple of years after a general election result like we saw less than 2 years ago. But I am very pleased to hear that. I think the overwhelming majority of MPs, they are wanting to see what's in British national interests, which is the continuity of the leadership that we've seen on the international stage.
But do you even think most of your own backbenchers believe that?
Yes, I do.
Because, I mean, we've said time and time again with things like welfare reform and other issues, it feels like it's the tail wagging the dog rather than the other way around.
You are absolutely right that we've heard time and time again that there's about to be a leadership election. It hasn't happened, and it tends to be the same voices that are constantly quoted.
What do we make of Andy Burnham pulling out of a keynote speech this morning?
Andy Burnham is a fantastic mayor for Greater Manchester. He is not a member of Parliament, and I want to see him continuing to do fantastic work in Greater Manchester, working incredibly well with a Labour government.
You don't think he'd be a good leader?
I think that he is fantastic where he is. I think we don't have a leadership election, and I don't think that I want one anytime soon.
Right. Danny, I mean, is it time for a new Prime Minister?
Well, I mean, clearly it is, and Keir Starmer has demonstrated time and again his inability to do the job that he's in. But I'm afraid the fact is, you know, it's understandable but regrettable that we focus on the personality. The problem with the Labour government is the Labour Party, and I don't think there's a single candidate who could take over, who could change the essential arithmetic, which is that you have a party completely split, completely trapped by its own left wing, unable to deliver the change that the people voted for, unable to reduce our absolutely unsustainable welfare spending in order to invest in both in defence but also in the tax cuts that will boost growth. So we can't achieve change even if they change leader, which of course they should do if they want to have any hope of reconnecting with the public, but it won't work.
But that's a fair point, Catherine.
No, I don't think it is.
This idea that the party is not delivering the change you were elected to deliver.
I think I am proud that we have now got waiting lists down to the lowest point for the last 3 years. I'm proud that borrowing is down. I'm proud that immigration is down. I'm proud that violent crime is down. But there is a lot more to do. Since the last King's speech, there have been 50 new laws. Many of them are only just coming into force. I absolutely acknowledge that there is a huge impatience for change, and the focus that this government has had on the cost of living, I think, is absolutely the right one.
But except, I mean, there's various issues to go through, isn't there? I mean, there's smash the gangs and all the rest of it. But one of the key points was that Labour was basing its economic plan on growth in this country, and the policies that we've seen introduced have not just not provided growth, they've actually done the opposite.
I think we have seen inflation come down, we've seen 6 interest rate cuts, and we've seen borrowing down, and it is because of the action that's been taken that has meant that we are better able to weather the international shocks and conflicts that we have seen. So I want to continue to do more on the cost of living and the NHS.
We've seen small businesses, particularly, absolutely crushed.
And young people out of work.
This does have an impact on employment and all the rest of it.
And I'm really concerned about the long-term trend of young people not in education, training or work.
It's your policy, to large part, isn't it? It's so expensive to hire young people now.
The trend in terms of youth unemployment has been going for a long time, and that is why there's been such a focus on apprenticeships. Rather than having we want to get half of people to university, saying that we want to have 70% of young people either in a gold standard apprenticeship or at university, I think is driving the progress we need to meet the skills gap. But the last thing I'd like to say is we have seen wages increase more in 10 months under Labour than we saw under 10 years in the Conservatives, as well as pension
being employed.
Well, I don't. What I want to make sure is that people actually have more money coming in, and we are finally seeing increases of wages and in the pensions going up faster than the costs of things. But there is a lot further that we need to go.
So, Stephen, you were right to say that Labour's supposed economic plan was to go for growth, but in fact their policies, whether that's national insurance, employers' national insurance, whether that's young people's minimum wage, it's crushed growth and it's crushed small businesses. And what they've done, in fact, is put up taxes by £66 billion over 3 statements, and that's largely been spent on benefits. Now, £66 billion is more than £2,000 per household in this country. Taxes have raised to be spent on benefits. We've been fighting hard in Parliament. We've forced Labour to U-turn on winter fuel, on family farm tax, on Chagos. The fact is that Keir Starmer is a lawyer, not a leader. These guys should get rid of him, but we should be a little bit careful what we wish for, because I think most of the alternatives perhaps are even worse. But what we're going to see is Keir Starmer in hock to his backbenchers who cannot cut welfare and who are going to make even more economically disastrous decisions, I'm afraid.
And Danny, just a final point to you on this, because when it comes to the economy, what we need is a clear economic plan. Are we getting that from reform at this stage?
Yes, I mean, there's two essential elements to it. One is to get the public finances under control, which we need to do by welfare reform, and the other is to get growth into the private sector, and we'll do that partly by undoing these job-destroying taxes and regulations, but also, crucially, by bringing down the cost of electricity, which is the highest in the developed world because of the mad policy of net zero. We will do that by restoring our genuine commitment in this country to using our own oil and gas reserves, using the treasure that's buried beneath our own shores and land to bring down the cost of electricity. That is the fundamental need that businesses have, lower energy bills.
I want to ask Catherine very quickly. Catherine, how will it go down that the PM will fight on and won't go anywhere? Is that what this cabinet want to hear? Because now speculation will grow on will the so-called men or women in grey suits go and see the PM and say, set out a timetable for exit?
I think, as I said, the overwhelming majority of Labour MPs do not want a leadership election. The focus needs to be in the national interest, and I don't believe there's anyone on this panel that thinks we're about to have a leadership election.
OK. Right. Thank you all. Just for the time being.
We are expecting Nigel Farage to speak imminently, so we'll bring that to you once that happens. But in the meantime, let's go to GB News Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood, who can bring us up to speed with what's been happening overnight. Morning, Tom.
Good morning. Some big changes on the big map. Yes, of course, only a fraction of the seats have been counting overnight. The majority of seats start counting at 9 a.m. But we've just had our first big reform win in London, in Havering. Now, some people might say, is Havering really London, or is it basically Essex? Well, I'll leave the audience to decide that, but certainly a big win for the Reform Party here. 30 seats gained from a standing start. Interestingly, this is also the site of one of Reform's MPs, Andrew Rossendale, who defected from the Conservatives. Clearly a very Reform part of the country, and Reform have taken their first London borough. Can they take more? That's a question. We're looking at all of these eastern parts of London for those Reform big targets. But let's zoom out to the English picture as a whole, because we can sort of match this here in Essex and look at all of these black splodges here. Now, black on this map means no overall control. Many of these councils have only had a third of their seats up for election, and Reform have done remarkably well all through Essex here. So where you see a black splodge, particularly in parts of Essex, but right up the east coast as well to the northeast, lots of black splodges in Hartlepool, in Hull, in northeast Lincolnshire. Big Reform gains here. In fact, in Hull, Reform won every single seat up for election. But only a third of those seats are up for election, and therefore no overall control on our map. But it does look like a very strong performance from Reform so far. I should say that only 46 council areas have been counting overnight. A further 90 start counting from 9 a.m. Scotland and Wales start counting at 9 a.m. as well. But let's move on to the Conservatives now, because in London, the Conservatives have started to peel back some of their losses from last time round. Westminster Council has been won by the Conservatives. They only needed to gain 2 seats in Westminster in order to win this council. They ended up gaining 7 seats. So a significant advance forward for the Conservatives there. And in Wandsworth, black on our map, no overall control, but the Conservatives are now the largest party. The Labour Party have lost Wandsworth Council. It looks like the Conservatives will be running the authority in Wandsworth. Also, Kensington and Chelsea remains blue there. So the Conservatives are happy in this sort of central part of London that they're doing relatively well, perhaps even exceeding some expectations there. For the rest of the country, well, the Conservatives have clung on in Harlow. They have clung on, interestingly, interestingly, down here in Fareham, that's Suella Braverman's seat. And Suella Braverman, of course, defected from the Conservatives to Reform, but Reform only picked up one seat there, and the Conservatives have held it. That is an interesting, perhaps, confounder to all of Reform's success in the rest of the country. Newcastle-under-Lyme is the other council area that Reform have won, where all of the seats are up for election. And in Newcastle-under-Lyme, the Reform Party won 27 seats, taking 10 from the Tories and 17 from the Labour Party. Labour, for their part, have lost many, many councils. One that they've lost is down here. Exeter. Exeter has seen a couple of seats go to the Reform Party, but more seats go to the Greens. It's, of course, a student area, lots of student voters here. The Labour Party losing some of those younger voters, in all likelihood, to the Greens. And we're going to see that, in all likelihood, in many parts of London as well. There is, however, an interesting confounding point for the Greens in London. Look over here to Richmond upon Thames, an absolute Liberal Democrat stronghold, and yet the Green Party in this seat had 5 seats before yesterday, now it has 0. Part of this is that there was a pact between the Lib Dems and the Greens at the last election, but surely part of it as well is this significant shift that we've seen within the Green Party. It's no longer perhaps a cuddly, warm, middle-class party of leafy England, and it is much more in the mould of perhaps a Corbynista style of politics. Has that made them go backwards in a place like Richmond upon Thames? Quite possibly. Well, as the morning rolls on, we're going to be filling in more of this map and colouring in, or perhaps making it black and white, given how many no overall control councils we're beginning to see. Well, we'll have much more of a clear picture as the day rolls on.
OK, Tom, thank you very much.
All right, Christopher Hope standing by with the latest as well. Some stuff from
all coming in. Even while Tom's at his big map over there, we hear the Conservatives have lost control of Hampshire County Council, and the Tories have held on to Kensington and Chelsea. No surprise there, given the wealth in that, and the wealth and the traditional support in KNC. But yeah, Tories hold KNC.
Catherine, let's bring you in. Labour's lost control of Southampton. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think particularly for the councillors there who've lost their seats, I'm gutted for them. I know how hard so many Labour councillors have worked to try and protect their communities from Conservative cuts. And so far we now have Labour in control of 10 councils, and Reform are now in control of 2. But I acknowledge for every Labour councillor that's lost their seat, that is devastating. And the fact that it does seem to happen after every change in general election, like it has always done. After the landslide election in 1997, we saw over 1,000 Labour councillors lost in 1999. But that is still really difficult news for all of those volunteers and those councillors who fought so hard.
OK, should we just have a quick word with Norman Baker? Former Lib Dem minister, of course. I mean, look, it's been an all right night for you, Norman.
It has, and I noticed when I was last on, there was a strapline underneath saying Lib Dem disappointment. There's no disappointment from me. I'm very happy, thank you very much. I'm very
now
happy
it says Lib Dem stonking success. That's from Daisy Cooper, who you spoke to earlier.
That was about, in particular, about Portsmouth, which was a Reform target, and we've taken the council there. We've also taken Stockport. We've taken every single seat on Richmond. We've gained more seats and wiped out the Tories in Sutton. We're doing very well. We've taken Eastleigh. So we're actually doing really strongly. And this is the 8th year that we have made gains in the net number of councillors we have. And no other party can match that by any shape or substance. And the possibility is that at the end of the day, when this is all counted, we will have the most councillors in local government of any party.
What strikes me with some of what you say, Norman, and I mean, it's the same for all parties to an extent, but if you want significant change, you've got to branch out of the areas that you do well in. You know, you mentioned Sutton, you mentioned Eastleigh. I mean, look, these are traditional Lib Dem heartlands, aren't they? Where's the branching out into other areas?
Well, the branching out will come from, I haven't seen the Hampshire result, but I imagine we gained councillors there. But the branching out will come in that kind of arc around London, particularly now. We're looking at East Sussex, we're looking at Huntingdonshire, we're looking at Surrey, places where we gained MPs for the first time at the last general election. But you're right, Stephen. I mean, we have to go further and faster if we can. But the reality is we've had to play the first past the post system as best we can with the resources we've got. We haven't got multi-billionaire cryptocurrency people in Thailand to give us money. We have to make do with what we've got.
But, Norman, if this was a school report card, it would say Lib Dems could do better. You're not cutting through, are you? When mainstream parties are losing their support, you should be picking up.
Well, that's not how I would describe it. I would describe it as the two main parties, as was, perhaps no longer, are hemorrhaging support. The Lib Dems are gaining support, and we are, of course, in a position to...
But the story is reform, isn't it? The surge is behind reform.
Yes, of course, the reform's done very well. But let's not forget that we are gaining... We are the only party in the centre, as it were, in traditional politics, with experience of government, which is continually gaining seats. They got the best ever result in the last general election of 72 MPs. We got a record number of councillors. That's only going one way, which is up. And that puts us in a very strong position for the next general election. So we're not disappointed tonight. It's the tortoise versus the hare. The tortoise won in the end, as you recall.
Indeed. All right, Norman. Thanks very much indeed.
Christopher, I think we've got a line, haven't we?
Yeah, Tories hold Bexley. That's a bit of a blow there in Kent for reform. The Tories hold Bexley. That is interesting. It shows that it is a patchy picture here. We are seeing, of course, Reform are around 29% of the vote, around where they were at Gorton and Denton. They haven't pushed higher into where they need to be to win an election outright, and it's a patchy picture. Danny Kruger, it's not all going your way today.
Well, I mean, it certainly is going our way. I mean, we're the only party picking up seats across the country. Both
that's a blow, isn't it, Bexley?
Well, I mean, listen, we'd like to win everywhere, but we're not going to win everywhere. And, of course, the Tory party is not extinct. It's still going to have some candidates and councillors that get through. But both Labour and the Tories have lost half the seats that are up for grabs overnight. They're both going backwards. 2 years after their Labour's election victory, they're the most unpopular party ever. 2 years after their defeat, the Tories have not recovered. They're going backwards too. Reform is clearly on the march. And, I see that Conservatives just lost Hampshire, Labour just lost Southampton. The fact is, North and South, East and West, Reform are picking up councillors everywhere. And this is a patchy picture, of course, and the voters must have their, some people are still going to vote Tory, I get that. But the fact is, there's only one big story going on at the moment, which is that Reform is breaking through both left and right.
Well, do you think you're the replacement for the Conservatives? But Nigel Farage talks about this left-right ending, so he thinks you're Labour too. What are you, is a question for many voters.
We are a new national party that speaks for the national interest, and we are of the right, philosophically, but we are leaning into Labour heartlands because there is a traditional, strong, patriotic Labour vote that now is coming to Reform. So, yes, we are taking from the Conservatives, but we're also, as you see, across the north of England, overnight, eating into those Labour heartlands. We are the new national party.
They're the new Farage party, who had been Conservative, then UKIP, then Brexit, and is now Reform. And there's nothing new about Nigel Farage. He's been at frontline politics for 30 years.
He's consistent.
Stephen, I just wanted to come in on Bexley. Look, I was there last week. I'm delighted about that result. The truth is, Reform, you did throw everything at that seat. And Nigel Farage, as recently as last week, said they had a real chance of holding it.
We did.
And I think if you look at Bexley, if you look at Westminster, Wandsworth, Kensington and Chelsea, you're seeing the green shoots, I think, in London there. And I'm delighted to see that, because it has been, obviously, a tough night for them.
I think I was out in Lincoln, and I know Reform were throwing everything there, and they will be disappointed not to have taken control of Lincoln. But the Conservatives are absolutely retreating to their old heartlands. I think Westminster was Conservative from 1968, or maybe 1965, I think it was. So I think retreating to that.
And they've only won that because of the split on the left. So the Greens have let Labour, knocked Labour out, and the Tories have come through the middle.
I think what we are seeing is we have seen Greens pick up votes in a way that has meant Reform has won in places.
Got some fresh words from Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. He says this: the results are tough. They are very tough. There's no sugarcoating it. We've lost some brilliant Labour representatives across the country. These are people who put so much into their communities, so much into our party, and that hurts, and it should hurt, and I take responsibility. He's leader. He's saying it's on me, but will this put any more pressure on him to go? That's what I wonder.
Well, what does responsibility mean if it doesn't mean going?
Well, that's the question. If it's down to you, what will you do about it? It's a question he's yet to answer.
Yeah, or we'll try and get some answers to that in a moment. Let's just remind you, we are expecting to hear from the Prime Minister on camera very soon, but also, in fact, before that, we should hear something from Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK. There's a huddle, if you like, of media. They've got the cameras up, so he must be out and about.
And it looks like they're walking as well.
So let's hope we can get a view and get some words from Nigel Farage very shortly. But anyway, as we wait for that, we may have to interrupt you, Eugene McCarthy, but let's talk to Eugene, the chair of the London Green Party. Morning to you. I mean, look, you are up, the Greens are up, but perhaps, and I know you're waiting on a lot of key London areas where you think you're going to do quite well, but it's not been perhaps the surge that many were expecting.
So I think it's really important that we talk about the two different times that boroughs are counting. We've got quite a few counting overnight. These are the ones where Reform are they were expected to, and they have swept, really. Very much shown that lots of the country would much prefer Reform to Labour.
Eugene, we just need to break in. We'll come back to you in a moment.
Good morning, everybody. I am delighted to be here in the sunshine outside Havering Town Hall, which I can now say is under new management. And and it's significant. It's our first win of a borough in London. And that in some ways goes against the trend, because the pattern that's emerging over the country is that Labour are being wiped out by Reform in many of their most traditional areas. And what you're going to see later on today is the Conservative Party being wiped out in their heartlands like Essex. So London goes a bit against the trend in that the Conservatives and Labour have held up in some of the other boroughs. But I think overall what's happened is a truly historic shift in British politics. We've been so used to thinking about politics in terms of left and right, and yet what Reform are able to do is to win in areas that have always been Conservative, but equally we're proving in a big way we can win in areas that Labour have dominated, frankly, since the end of World War I. At the moment, we're winning 1 in 3 of all the seats that are up, but I genuinely think the best is yet to come. I'm very excited about the North East results, the Yorkshire results, some more to come in the West Midlands. Essex, we're feeling supremely confident, and that's significant given that half the Cheddar Cabinet have seats in Essex. So it's a big, big day. It's a big, big day, not just for our party, but for a complete reshaping of British politics in every way. And it all goes to show that over the course of the last 2 years, since we made that breakthrough in the general election, we have professionalised the party. We've done it at a very, very rapid rate. I'm thrilled and delighted and happy to take any questions.
Nigel, you're very exciting process so far. There's a lot still to come.
Yes.
You clearly made a lot of claims. You're clearly doing very well. How well do you think you'll do by the end of the day?
The best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. I'm very excited about the prospects for us in Sunderland, in Barnsley, in Calderdale, in Wakefield, Cannock Chase, areas like that. And by the way, we took Newcastle under Lyme from the Conservatives, but there are going to be some big, big Labour wins. And perhaps in historic terms, Wales is the biggest of all. Labour have not lost an election in Wales since 1922. I couldn't tell you whether Plaid will be first or we're going to be first, but what I can tell you is it's going to be a tight race between the two. So Wales, historically significant.
Nigel, live on Good Morning Britain. A lot of sentiment there. What about specifics, though? What do you actually need to do for communities, councils up and down the country?
Well, we've got a track record now. Where we have majority control of the 10 councils we've won on May the 1st last year, 1 year in, we can say hand on heart we've already saved over £300 million, and we've kept our council tax rises lower than any of the other parties running comparable counties. And if you doubt me, the IFS actually yesterday backed that up. So we are delivering value for money. What we're going to do here is, whilst many of these are new to politics, we've also got some old lags. Sorry, Keith. Well, you weren't the council leader, So we've also got some experience of how to run this place, and we're very excited about the prospects. By the way, no one's got a magic wand. We all know that finances of local councils all over the country are severely stretched, and we're not promising miracles, but we are promising good value for
I
money.
recognise that this might be a protest vote though against Labour and Keir Starmer, and that's why people are coming to reform. When it comes to the general election, the results might look very different.
Well, have a look at last year. You know, last year we far exceeded expectations in the counties that were fought. You know, it can't continue to be a fluke or a protest vote. I would honestly say you're witnessing an historic shift in British politics. This is now the most national of all parties. We're competitive in the north of Scotland. We were competitive in Cornwall in the county elections last year. We're competitive in every part of the country, and we're here to stay.
You talked about some difficult questions of funding for local councils. You've had some difficult questions about your own funding, £5 million.
Yeah. We'll talk about that any other time you like. Go on.
Nigel, we've heard a claim before that the old two-party system is dead. What makes this time different, and how confident are you, based on these results, that you're heading for number 10?
Well, look, I think, you know, apart from London, as I say, London, there are some London boroughs in which Labour have held up well overnight. The Conservatives have won back Westminster, although failed to do so in Wandsworth. There is still some residual strength. You know, both the Labour and Conservative parties would view London as their stronghold. But if you go to Merseyside, you go to Greater Manchester, you know, just have a look overnight at what we've achieved already in results. You know, in Greater Manchester, Tameside being an example, we won all the seats that were up overnight. And one of the big ones I'm looking forward to on Merseyside is St Helens, later on today, where all 46 seats are up. Now, these are areas, you know, Boris Johnson did well in 2019 in the Red Wall, but what you're going to see today from us goes way, way further than that. And I think what you're seeing is voters who aren't just coming to us for a one-off, they're now becoming reformers in every way. So I am convinced that it's a fundamental change. I said yesterday that this set of elections was like our Beecher's Brook. You know, you've got to clear Beecher's Brook, you've got to land safely if you're going to go on and win the Grand National. And these are the most significant set of elections between now and the general election, and I think we're in a very good place. And our lead, you look at our lead over the other parties, it's consistently about 9.5%.
Talked about voting reform to get Keir Starmer out this morning. He said he takes responsibility for the results, but he isn't going anywhere. Do you think that will change over the next few weeks?
I suspect when you see the full results in the Red Wall, there'll be a rebellion. Personally, I'd be very sad to see the Prime Minister go. I would be very, very sad indeed. He's the greatest asset we've got.
Yes. Like the Conservatives will win no seats in Havering. What has the result in London done to the Conservatives nationally? And could we be about to see Hexit, Havering leaving London as a result of this?
Well, look, you know, as far as Havering's concerned, there are many, many here who feel that their association is with Essex, and ever since 1965 are slightly resented being part of Greater London. All I would say is people ought to have the choice to make a decision on that. And there'll be an argument to and fro. So yes, people here ought to have that ability, ought to have that choice. More broadly, you know, I think what you're going to see, and obviously we've got Scotland to come as well, what you're going to see by the end of today is that whilst the Conservative Party have the odd pocket of strength, predominantly in very affluent areas, they will cease to be a national political party. And I made the point earlier that we are competitive right down from the southwest of England up to the northeast of Scotland. And I would honestly say now that we are the only true national party. We're competitive everywhere. Yes.
What's your message to people who didn't vote reform yesterday? How do you seal the deal with the whole country?
My message is, I know there are lots of people out there who think, well, it's still all a bit new, you know, is it really here to stay? Can they really do it? Can they really win? And my answer to them is, we did it last year, we've done it again this year, and we will go on doing it between now and the next general election. And we are the opposition in British politics. The current makeup of Parliament, with the Conservatives as opposition, reflects where we were in 2024. It does not reflect where we are now. If you want a party that's going to stand up to the way that private business is being attacked, to the way that those who get up in the morning and go to work feel they're paying more and more money, getting less and less in their pocket, and subsidising many who choose not to work as an option, then we are your choice. And that's the reshaping of politics. it's not about left and right, but increasingly it's about whether you go to work or not. And I've had that all over the country. The one other thing I would say, going around, and I've been 9 weeks on the road, non-stop, 6 days a week, you know, as far north as the Shetland Islands. One thing that consistently I get in the street from people, especially from women actually, is please save us. Please save us. A sense that society is in rapid decline, law and order, antisocial behaviour, shoplifting, whatever it is, please save us. There is a feeling out there that all the values that have mattered to people their whole lives, the kind of country they want their kids and grandkids to live in, is very, very severely under threat.
People who get up and go to work in the morning don't get given £5 million out of nowhere.
Thank you very much. You're very valuable. Good man.
Cost of living's a big thing.
Sorry. When's the next general election?
What's the next step to win a general election?
Oh, to keep building. To keep building. To keep building. To keep building our data. To select our candidates for the general election. We've got. I mean, look. We've still got a lot of work to do. I was asked before Christmas how complete the reform project was. I said we're about halfway there. We're now more than 2/3 of the way to where we need to be in terms of planning, preparation, professionalisation, fundraising, all of those things. But listen, we're here with a purpose. I mean, we want to turn the country around. We all feel it's headed in the wrong direction on a number of major issues. Frankly, many people find the societies they're living in unrecognisable from just a few short years ago. This is stuff of the heart. This is really emotive stuff that matters to people.
Will you be accepting any more defection?
No, doors closed. Sorry. Rosa came. He's very welcome. But no more Tories anymore. No.
Any more Labour?
Well, who knows? Who knows? I mean, we've already had Sir Robin Wales from Newham. You know, former council leader and actually quite a legend in local government in Labour. And I think the time for conversations with patriotic old Labour representatives is now. So I will take Labour defections.
How do you think Keir Starmer's got left then?
I would suspect that the rumblings are going to start even before the King's speech on the 13th of May. He'll be lucky to still be there by midsummer, would be my guess. But as I say, personally, I think he's a great chap, and I really want him to stay.
Final question. In terms of our viewers really concerned about the cost of living, we're seeing prices going up. What can reform offer them?
We have stuck ourselves into an insanity on energy. It was the Conservative Party that signed us up to net zero, that decided there was no need to be a manufacturing nation, no need to produce our own oil and gas. What we are paying...
This war hasn't helped.
No, and nor did the Ukraine war. And there are always events beyond our control, which is why we should be absolutely self-sufficient, not just in the production of oil and gas, but also we've lost the refining ability. It's one of the reasons that diesel is so expensive. We're not able to produce it. So, you know, look at Norway. Look at Norway. They opened 49 new drill sites last year on their side of the North Sea. In fact, you can actually see some of the new Norwegian rigs from our rigs that are currently being decommissioned. We opened 0 last year, and what this war has told us, above all else, is that we need to be as self-sufficient in energy and as self-sufficient in food as we possibly can be. And not relevant here in Havering, but one of the things that we will be doing out in the rural areas and in the counties, we will fight every single solar farm application on good farmland. So if we produced our own gas, the price would be a lot cheaper. The government will tell you, oh no, it's a global price. Well, do you think that getting gas out of the ground in Montana, liquefying it, bringing it across the Atlantic and regassing it is the same price as what we could do it for here, both onshore and offshore? It's nonsense.
Is it possible to have a phone call with your friend Donald Trump to maybe end this war in Iran? That would help prices over here.
I think the war in Iran is very close to an end.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Right, can I ask you to take one step back?
So that's Nigel.
All right. There's Nigel Farage there. I mean, clearly very, very happy man. We'll get full analysis on that in a moment. But first, let's hear from the Prime Minister. Sorry, Tal.
That's right, Tal.
£250 and the trajectory you're going on by the end of the day, over 50 1,500 Labour councillors that have lost their seats. You just said that you take responsibility. Did you contemplate this morning that the responsibility is that it's time for you to go and to resign?
Let me be clear, these are really tough results. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And we have lost brilliant Labour representatives, people who put so much into their communities, so much into our party and our movement. And the voters have sent a message about the pace of change, how they want their lives improved. I was elected to meet those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from those challenges and plunge the country into chaos. Well, they've sent a message that the change that we promised isn't being delivered in a way they can feel, and also, frankly, they're fed up with years of the status quo. But we were elected to deal with those challenges, and I'm not going to walk away from that and to plunge the country into chaos.
Win these seats back. Did you even contemplate it? Do you acknowledge it as a conversation even?
Look, I think it's absolutely clear that the electorate are fed up with the fact that their lives aren't changing quickly enough. And this has been going on for a very, very long time. I think that we were right to emphasise to the country the difficult inheritance we've had, the challenges we face, but we haven't done enough to convince people that things can improve, their lives can get better, the hope. And I'm not going to walk away from that challenge. We made a number of calls which were the right calls in terms of stabilising the economy, investing in our public services and not getting dragged into the Iran war. But we also made unnecessary mistakes. And my job now is to set out the steps that we will take to bring about the change that people want and deserve.
Resign.
No, I'm not going to walk away and plunge the country into chaos. We were elected to deal with these challenges, and that's what we will do.
Set out a timetable for your departure.
Well, I think Ed Miliband has dealt with this and made absolutely clear that he supports me.
What do you say to those in your party that are really upset with you? They don't think you're getting it and they're calling for your resignation. What do you say to would-be challengers and the party? What's your message?
Well, I think it's very important that we don't sugarcoat these results, so I'm not going to do that. They are tough results, I accept that. They reflect voters who don't feel that their lives have changed enough or quickly enough, and that's been going on for a long time. We were elected to deal with that, and I'm not going to walk away from that responsibility and plunge the country into chaos.
One of your own top team messaged me this morning and said that you are the reason that Labour risks handing the country to reform, that you are the problem. What do you say to that? That if you stay on, you will hand the country to reform?
What I'd say to that is we won a landslide victory in July 2024. I led our party to that victory. That is a 5-year mandate to change the country. Yes, there are difficult conditions. The inheritance was terrible. The international context is very, very difficult. But we need to inject that hope and convince people that things can and will get better. And that's why in coming days I'll set out the further steps that we will take.
How are you feeling? Are you feeling upset today?
I am feeling very much for the brilliant candidates, the brilliant councillors, the brilliant representatives that we have lost, because I know for them they have put so much into their communities, so much of their life into public service. And so I'm thinking about them and thinking about what we need to do to rebuild and to take our country forward. Yes, it was a 5-year term I was elected to do. I intend to see that through. Thank you.
It's just gone 9 o'clock. That breaking news from the Prime Minister vowing not to quit. He says he will not plunge the country into chaos. Our political editor, Christopher Hope, was listening across that. What did you make of what you heard?
Well, he fights on. Will he be there? That's the question. I'm not going to walk away from this, he said twice. talked about the timetable issue that Ed Miliband reportedly said to him, set out a timetable for your departure, Prime Minister. He didn't deny that had happened. He said that Ed Miliband has made clear he supports me. He won't sugarcoat the results. He apologised to people, Labour supporters who have lost their seats. He's not going to walk away and plunge this country into chaos, he said. He made repeatedly clear he is serving the full 5-year term. To be fair to the Prime Minister, he's been saying that for weeks now. He talks about the July 24 win for Labour as a personal mandate for him, that landslide win. That often happens with leaders when they come under fire. They look back at those election wins and see them as a personal mandate for them. But no question, he wants to keep going. It's a weekend now, speculation about him. Will the Cabinet want this to happen? Will they go and see him and say this can't carry on?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend on just how big these losses go.
It is, and we're not sure how, but there's some speculation now that the losses may be as low as 1,200 rather than the 15 to 2,000, 100 to 2,000 we had thought about. We'll see how that plays out. Again, we're barely scratching the surface of the full results yet. But if it comes back towards him, that may be enough. He's signalling a speech probably on Monday, setting out how he'll change and deliver more quickly the change people want. And just going back to Nigel Farage, reflecting on what he said the best is yet to come. Now, he thinks that the Reform UK party have bigger results coming in Cannock, Wakefield, Sunderland. These are the red wall seats he's been telling us he's going to take for a while. We haven't seen them yet. The forecasting is that they're on 29% of the vote, the same as the Gorton and Denton by-election. Not enough for the landslide, but it is worth stepping back and thinking how remarkable it is that this party barely existed in its current form 2 years ago until he took it over.
Yeah. Can we just go back to the Prime Minister for a moment? Because I am struck by the Prime Minister now, Sarah Sackman last night on GB News, also David Lammy speaking this morning, all saying the same thing, which is essentially that we need to give the plan time, we need to move faster on the plan.
Yeah.
If we are facing, and we know it's early days, we've still got a lot of results to come, but if we are facing historic losses here for the Labour Party, how can this government read that as an indication to go faster? People don't seem to like the direction of travel at all.
Well, it hasn't worked yet, but he wants time. Hey, we are not 2 years into this government. Labour are pointing out that the party had a disastrous local elections in the first term of the Labour government. Again, they can turn it round, but the clock is ticking. It isn't working. He isn't connecting with voters. That's a problem. But is the problem him or is it the party? And is it the fact is that the party's been diverted by the Iranian war, Ukraine and other issues too, but he's going to be setting out, as probably on Monday, how he wants to make that change more quickly.
All right. Chris, thank you very much. Are we going to get an update from Tom? Yeah, all right. Tom Harwood, who's over at the video wall with the latest. Tom?
That's right. We've been getting through results throughout the course of the morning, and it's just gone 9 o'clock, which means another 90 council areas have begun counting, as have Wales and Scotland. So we're going to start to see a trickle more of these results turn into a flood as the morning progresses. But let's have a look at where things stand now at just after 9 o'clock. Let's start with London. Over here in London, we've had a couple of pretty significant declarations. 2 boroughs right out over in the east. We've got Havering here, which is our first turquoise patch on the London map. Yes, we heard from Nigel Farage earlier that the Reform Party have taken Havering from a standing start, 30 gains, 30 councillors in Havering, and of course that is the site of one of Reform's MPs, the former Conservative MP turned Reform, Andrew Rossendale. Interestingly, however, down in Bexley, just below Havering, the Conservatives have managed to hold on there. A lot of speculation that Reform would win here too, and yet it doesn't look like Reform has made significant gains in this area. So it's a patchy picture in London for Reform, although I think it's fair to say London has always been the most challenging part of the country when it comes to the Reform Party. Just sticking with London for the moment, we've seen some Conservative gains, particularly in the centre. The Conservatives win back Westminster and come 1 seat away from taking total control of Wandsworth. It looks like they they will control Wandsworth because they are the largest party. They only need one seat to make a majority, and one seat is an independent former Conservative councillor. It looks like they will do that deal. But let's zoom out to the wider country now, and what's going on with all of these black splodges. Black splodges on the map mean no overall control. It perhaps obscures a picture of just how well Reform are doing. Let's look up here at, for instance, Hartlepool. Every single seat was won by the Reform Party in Hartlepool, but only a third of the seats are up for election. So this, you might think, would be a turquoise splodge on the map. It's actually a black splodge because only a third of the seats are up for election. That's the similar picture in Hull and in North East Lincolnshire, where Reform have also almost swept the map and done very well indeed. But we're getting more of these council pictures through in England as those extra councils begin to count as of, gosh, about 5 minutes ago.
Tom, thanks very much indeed. Well, we heard from the Prime Minister a few minutes ago, but let's see what Defence Secretary John Healey has to say. Good to see you this morning. I know already today you've said, that you back the Prime Minister, that you think he should stay in position. I wonder why that is, when clearly an awful lot of the country aren't liking the direction he's taking you in.
Well, good morning. First, I just want to pay credit and respect to all those candidates that stood, because it's a big step to put yourself forward for the judgment of voters and stand for election. But for Labour candidates in particular, I know how hard this campaign has been and how national sentiment has made their campaign harder, and it's clear results are still coming in, but a lot of good Labour councillors have lost their seats and will lose their seats today, and I'm really sorry for that. As far as the reasons for this go, I think we can really see the frustration that people have. They're not seeing the scale of change they want to see fast enough. They haven't got a trust restored in politics, and these aren't problems in the making over the last couple of years. It's almost 2 decades in the making. We can work back, we can win back that confidence, but we've got to be bolder. We've got to deliver the changes that people voted for, and we've above all got to give people a sense of hope and confidence in the future.
Forgive me, how can you be bolder when, one of the big issues, you look at defence spending, where I know it's higher than it was, but with no timetable to get to 3%, which a lot of people think is vital. A lot of the money could have come from welfare cuts. Every other party is talking about cuts, and the Labour Party can't deliver on that. So you say be bolder. How can you, with your backbenchers blocking every move?
Well, we can be bolder. We can give people hope, but you can't be hopeful if you feel insecure. And on national security, in this global crisis that we face, we've got to boost defence spending. We're already increasing it by a record amount since the end of the Cold War, and the Prime Minister said we will. We've got to deal with economic insecurity. That means action on rising costs and business confidence, and we will. And we've got to deal with the fact that people feel unsafe online and on the streets, and we've got to deal with that insecurity as well, and we will. And you'll hear the Prime Minister talking more about that, but you'll see in the King's speech next week with the new parliamentary session a government that is acting on all those fronts, dealing with insecurity, looking to give people some hope and confidence for the future again.
Are you and the Prime Minister living in cloud cuckoo land? It's what many people will be asking this morning. You're facing historic losses in the local elections. The response from the Prime Minister and from yourself this morning appears to be, we need to get on with the plan just faster. Clearly, the electorate is telling you they don't like the plan. They don't like the direction of travel, and the change that they're experiencing is not change for the better.
Well, that's not right. They have seen changes. They want more. They want faster. But they've seen NHS waiting lists cut by 400,000. They've seen mortgage rates come down with 6 interest rate cuts. They've seen the biggest increase in armed forces pay for nearly 2 decades. They've seen for the first time the lowest paid workers with rights to sick pay but they expect more. They want more. They want to see a confidence for the future. We do this in an uncertain world by being stronger on national security, and we will, by also giving stronger economic security and business confidence to people, and we do it by helping to reinforce that sense of safety that people need to have online and on the streets. And you will see steps towards that by being bolder, delivering faster, and being determined, as I know the Prime Minister will be, to win back from this very bad set of results, which are a serious setback for Labour, but also a loss of very good Labour councillors and Labour councils in some parts of the country.
Forgive me, people want some straight talking in all of this. I know you've got to toe the party line to an extent. You say people want things better. They do, and a lot of that is based on the economy. And the economy is in a mess, and frankly, we've had two budgets which seem to be doing the opposite of what you said you wanted to achieve, which was growth and stability and confidence. And that has all been totally taken away as a result of the two budgets we've had. You say you've got confidence in the Prime Minister. Do you have confidence in the Chancellor, or does she need to go? Something needs to happen.
Yeah, look, global growth is low. It's threatened by a looming oil price crisis and that wider economic insecurity. And in those circumstances, you know, we do have a Prime Minister that's demonstrated that he has rebuilt Britain's influence in the world. He can bring countries together. For Ukraine, we're bringing countries together on Strait of Hormuz. He's demonstrated he can stand Britain's ground on the Middle East. And it's that sort of leadership that has the potential to bring the confidence back to Britain. And I know the Prime Minister can work this back. I know he can deliver for the future, and I know he will be determined to do that. And before we finish, let's just also mark VE Day today, a reminder that that was the end of the war in Europe, but it was the start of a country pulling together to build from deep adversary a brighter future. And some of the challenges that we now face with rising global threats, increasing global inflation, the risk of a global oil crisis mean that we've got to be a government with a similar determination for the future as well.
The country does want to pull together, Mr Healy, but if you look at the results, it wants to pull together behind Nigel Farage.
Well, Nigel Farage doesn't want to pull people together. He's interested in causing division, and he's interested in exploiting problems rather than fixing them. Look what he said when Worcester Council, a reform council that promised to cut council tax, hiked it by 9%. He said, I wish I hadn't bothered to win Worcester. It demonstrates that he really isn't wanting to deal with the problems that people face. And I would just say to people, keep a very close eye on these new reform councils that we've elected today.
Can you shed any light on why Andy Burnham pulled out of a keynote speech this morning? Because we're hearing reports that Labour MPs are thinking about offering him their safe seat.
None at all. I can't speak for Andy Burnham. I've got no idea what his diary is doing. All I would say is he's got a big job to do. He's not even halfway through his mandate as the elected mayor of Greater Manchester, and good Labour mayors like Andy Burnham are a part of the way that this country, with good Labour mayors, good Labour councils remaining, can work with a Labour government.
It's no secret, is it, that he harbours leadership ambitions? And we're also hearing that Ed Miliband is asking the Prime Minister to set out a timetable for his resignation.
Look, the last thing that I think people should expect or want to see at a time of greater insecurity and looming price rises is a party that's turning in on itself, a party that starts arguing amongst itself. Instead, they want to have a government on their side, working to win back support, working to deliver the changes that they voted for. That's what they've got a right to expect. And I'm confident that that's what you'll see Keir Starmer setting out to try and do in the days ahead.
I have to say, Defence Secretary, you sound like a defeated man this morning.
I don't feel that at all. Listen, I've been around a while. You know, I was elected for 2 years back in 1999. I was part of that Labour government that lost in one day over 1,100 councillors, but worked our way back, as we will again. We worked our way back then and won the election in 2001, won that in 2005. We can do that for the future. We can do that by being bolder.
You had a popular leader then, didn't you?
We can do that by being bolder, and we can do that by giving people hope for the future. And for me, that starts with security.
Is there hope for the future, though, when you've got the most unpopular Prime Minister on record and what sounds like a divided cabinet?
Now, nobody understands or is ready to shoulder more of the responsibility for this set of results than Keir Starmer. I know Keir Starmer. I know he'll be determined to work his way back, and he will want to lead a Labour government getting on with the job that people elected us to do. And we've all got a responsibility to play our part in that, and I certainly will.
Just before we let you go, I've got to take you back to Rachel Reeves. I did note that when I asked you what should happen, you didn't say she should stay. Should she go?
Look, I'm not here to commentate on people, their performances. I'm here to speak for a Labour government that has had a really bad set of results, lost a lot of good local Labour councillors, that has a big job to do to give people confidence in the future, confidence in us as a government that will deliver what they elected us to do less than 2 years ago. We're part of a 5-year parliament. We will do that. We'll do that by being bolder. We'll do that by concentrating on the concerns that people have and not turning inwards and fighting amongst ourselves.
John Healey, we're looking at number 10 Downing Street right now. Who's going to be there after the next general election? Will it be Sir Keir Starmer or will it be Nigel Farage?
Well, you know, one of the people have elected a lot of local councillors, but this election has shone a spotlight on national leaders like Nigel Farage, and you know, it has shown him ducking questions about a secret £5 million loan from a crypto billionaire, ducking questions about how soft he is on national security, weak on Putin, flaky on NATO. This is not a man I would trust to lead this country or to be responsible for our national security and our future.
John Healey, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you for your time.
This morning. Have we got Olivia Utley? OK, let's talk to Olivia Utley, who I think is in Downing Street for us this morning. I'm just intrigued, Olivia. I asked him twice what should happen to Rachel Reeves. He twice refused to say, or refused to defend her, refused to say she should stay. I thought that was quite telling.
I thought that was absolutely fascinating, Stephen. I was so glad that you pulled him up on it. It sounds as though, although the Cabinet is forming a sort of virtual suit of armour around the Prime Minister, Rachel Reeves is in their firing line. Could it be that the beleaguered Prime Minister decides that it's time to lose his Chancellor? Keir Starmer snuck out of Downing Street early this morning, doesn't want to face the media glare, and not surprisingly, it is hard to overestimate what a terrible night this has been for Keir Starmer. Made worse for him by Nigel Farage's jubilation at reform surpassing almost all expectations. It is, of course, very, very early days, but Labour has lost 200 council seats so far. It appears to be losing to pretty much everyone, pretty much everywhere. I think there are a couple of things that we can take away from this to begin with. Firstly, reform are clearly the big winners so far. The Greens don't seem to have lived up to some of their most ambitious expectations, with Labour, Reform, the Conservatives holding some of those seats in London, which the Greens wanted to take. Now, I think that's really interesting and important. There has long been a battle in the Labour Party waging over whether to move to the right and try and tackle reform head-on on immigration, or to move to the left and tackle the Greens head-on on the environment, on net zero, on Gaza. At the moment, there are plenty of Labour MPs, especially on the backbenches, who would like to see the party shift to the left. People like Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, and Wes Streeting, the more right-wing wing of the party, are quite unpopular. Will all of that change after the results of these elections? Will Labour decide that actually reform is the real threat and it's time time for them to move to the right. I think the other really interesting story of the night is what is happening in the Red Wall. Labour are losing everywhere. Places like Tameside, which they've held for such a long time. Places like Redditch, Wigan. There's huge losses in Wigan too. Now, that's interesting because we know that the Red Wall decides elections. The Conservatives managed to win in 2019 because the Red Wall went blue. But it is also interesting when you consider Andy Burnham's prospects. For many, Andy Burnham is the most popular choice to replace the Prime Minister. But for him to get a seat in Parliament, to give him a chance of becoming Prime Minister, he would have to win a seat somewhere in or around Manchester. Now, there are rumours that there are MPs who are willing to give up their safe seats for Andy Burnham should he wish to run. But at the moment, it's beginning to look as though there are no safe seats in that belt of the north of England. Reform put a lot of their effort, a lot of their candidates, a lot of their canvassers in that area of the north of England, and you can bet your bottom dollar that if there were to be a by-election in Manchester or the surrounding area, Reform would throw the kitchen sink at it. So I think for Andy Burnham's supporters, oddly enough, what they want to do at the moment is to keep Keir Starmer in for as long as possible. And I think that might be why you're seeing people like John Healey, people actually like Lucy Powell, a long-time critic of the Prime Minister, the deputy leader of the party, saying that Starmer should stay in place. It's not because they like Starmer, it's not because they want him to be Prime Minister, it's because they want to buy a bit of time for their man, Andy Burnham. So although the Cabinet is looking loyal to the Prime Minister now, although not to Rachel Reeves, that could all change very, very quickly should Andy Burnham's fortunes shift a little.
Very interesting, Olivia. Thank you very much.
All right, so let's have a word with Reform MP Danny Kruger, who's here. I mean, intriguing. John Healey saying Nigel Farage may have won well on these local elections. There's a very big difference, he says, between that and getting elected to Downing Street.
Well, that's true. I mean, John Healey was elected with a massive mandate for change in 2024, and look where we are. So 2 years is a long time in politics. But listen, what's happening is that across the country, voters who have looked at Nigel Farage over many years have concluded that he represents the change that's needed. We won a lot of councils this time last year. Interestingly, in those areas, and remember, we've had all this accusation of, Reform having problems in local government. Actually, we've been majorly bearing down on waste in local government and improving services. And in those areas where you've had unitary councils next door to the county councils we won last year, we've won again. So we're doing well, especially in the places where we've got a local footprint. So we're building. And what's happening overnight now is you see up in Labour areas in the north and the Midlands, Tory areas in the south and the east, people are flocking to Reform. We represent the change that is needed. It's just not OK, in my view, for these establishment parties to keep flinging at us the accusation that we're not serious. When look at the state of the country and look at the serious planning that is underway in Reform. As you've heard from Nigel, major professionalisation of the party, which he only took over 2 years ago, to the point where we are now the leading national party across the country, running councils. And you're going to see in the coming months further plans set out as we prepare for government itself. So I'm afraid that line that the establishment parties are pushing just doesn't hold, and it's going to get increasingly desperate.
Do you think the Prime Minister should go?
Well, listen, I mean, yes, because I'm afraid he's rubbish. I mean, not to put too fine a point on it.
Nigel doesn't.
Well, he doesn't because he recognises what an asset...
The Prime Minister is the greatest asset
what an asset
yes.
politically he is to us. But frankly, I'm afraid to say it doesn't matter. It's not about the leader. Like the Tory party, it's not about the leader, it's about the party. And in Labour, you see a completely split party, paralysed by its own left wing. They can't make the changes that are needed. They can't deliver for the country. So whoever they have in charge, I'm afraid it's over for them as well.
OK, Danny, thank you. Christopher Hope. I mean, it's fascinating listening to how the politicians, how they're making a meal out of all that. I mean, for Reform, it's a walk in the park, isn't it? They're winning, and they're winning big. But for the rest of them,
Yes, it really is. I mean, what can the PM say? I'm not going to walk away from that and plunge a country into crisis. Labour don't have a history of regicide, removing a leader. They need 81 Labour MPs to support it. Who would replace them? As Liv Utley was saying there correctly, Andy Burnham might be the prince over the water. He's not even on the pitch. He's not even an MP yet. He can't win a by-election and go straight into Downing Street. There's a pause, and that's why I think his supporters are trying to get round the PM and say, not just yet, maybe not the PM, but not just Burnham yet.
So it's all a game.
Yeah, West Streeting, would he go sooner? Because the window of opportunity closes for him the longer he waits. Shabana Mahmood, I think, is well regarded by reform-adjacent supporters. In fact, Nigel Farage respects her and thinks she's quite good or doing her best at that job, I think. But would she win the support of the base? Probably not. Angela Rayner, under investigation by the taxman, below the ministerial standard, according to Lauren Magnus last September. Is she right? It's not really clear who can replace him, and that's keeping him in post. And it carries on, and as Danny's saying, politically, Keir Starmer in number 10 helps Reform UK because he's so unpopular, change is so difficult. But to hear John Healey there say, serious setback for Labour, I mean, he's an old warhorse. I mean, he's sent out on these morning rounds for your difficult questions because he's been here before. He was there, frankly, as he says, back in 1999 when they lost 1,100 votes 2 years after that landslide and came back to win in 2001.
And, Chris, it's just worth reflecting the pressure on the Prime Minister. Could it grow even more now? We're still waiting on Wales, we're still waiting on Scotland.
Well, we're a fifth of the way through. 5,000
long day to
English council seats, and then in Wales and Scotland, all on GB News this afternoon. It's going to be a torrent of results this afternoon.
It is. All right, Chris, thank you very much indeed, and thank you to Danny Kruger as well for joining us this morning. Should we see what Tom Harwood is making of it all? Morning, Tom.
He's acquired a new
very
map.
good morning to you. The map looks very colourful, doesn't it? I have to say, this was the old map. Let's wipe it clear. You can see a lot of red on where that was before. But let's turn to the map as things stand today, and we're starting to rebuild that colour. You'll notice a lot less red, but you'll also notice that a lot of these seats have not yet been counted. No, 90 council areas started counting at 9 a.m. So we're at the foothills of a lot of these results. But those that did count overnight, well, it is a very mixed picture. A bad picture for the Labour Party. A lot of the areas that were red have turned black. What does black on our map mean? No overall control. Take Hartlepool, up here in the northeast. Every single seat that was up for election went to the Reform Party. Every single one. But only a third of the seats are up for election, so it's gone to no overall control. It's a similar picture in, for example, northeast Lincolnshire, where the Reform Party did very, very well indeed, and it's a very similar picture in Hull as well, where all of these councils have gone no overall control. In fact, the councils that Reform have won, Newcastle-under-Lyme, where every seat was up for election, they won 27 of the things, 10 from the Tories and 17 from the Labour Party. But let's zoom in on London for a second, because ultimately we've seen one gain for the Reform Party right over in the east in Havering. Some people might consider it more Essex than London, but that does paint a picture because a lot of Essex wins for the Reform Party today. Zooming in closer to central London, and you'll see some surprise Conservative successes. The Conservative Party taking back Westminster Council. The Conservative Party likely taking control of Wandsworth Council, although no overall control, Conservatives' largest party, likely being able to do a deal with the one independent, former Conservative, on that council. And you've got a sea of Lib Dem orange, or gold, they sometimes like to refer to it, the further west you go. But a lot of London's 32 boroughs still to count. I want to take you back to sort of the Greater Manchester area for a moment, something we might call Burnham land, as in Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester. You can't see much here because it's sort of a no overall control splodge, so I've taken the liberty of zooming in. Let's walk over to the touchscreen, courtesy here a map of Election Maps UK. And this is that same Manchester area, but we've broken it down by ward. And you can see, instead of black splodges over here in Oldham and Tameside, you can see see that sea of reform turquoise, and then Stockport going overwhelmingly Lib Dem there. If we go over to the west and we look at Chorley, Wigan, Bolton and Salford, just look how much turquoise there is here. This is all Andy Burnham's backyard. What does that tell us, particularly about where people in the northwest are feeling and where they're going? Really interesting, more granular results here of those wards, even though on our big map over here it doesn't show so much as a reform, because some of these have got no overall control, and again in many of these councils only a third of the wards, only a third of the councillors were up for election. But as I say, still 90 council areas began counting at 9 this morning. We're going to be getting a trickle and then a flood of more results as this morning goes on.
Good morning, 9:30 on Friday, the 8th of May, live across the UK. Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Miriam Cates.
Well, Britain has rolled the dice and it's fallen on Reform UK as the turquoise tidal wave sweeps the nation, while Labour suffer a brutal battering in the elections so far.
Labour are being wiped out by Reform in many of their most traditional areas, and what you're going to see later on today is the Conservative Party being